Oh, she joined us. She just popped in.
Oh, there we go. Good. I'm glad to see it. So with that, I'd like to resume this, the regular meeting of council for February 17th, 2021. I'll remind the audience, well, I'll just say that it is a virtual meeting and that it is being streamed on our website and also televised by Rogers, and I believe will be available on our YouTube channel a bit later. I'd like to just do our town, our acknowledgement that the town of Midland recognizes that it is located on land which is the traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabe people, now known as the Chippewa Tri-Council, comprised of Bosley First Nation, Ramith First Nation, and the Georgina Island First Nation. This territory is within the Pre-Confederation Treaty 5 and Treaty 16 and included within the Williams Treaties of 1923. The town of Midland recognizes that it is located on land which is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and historic homelands of the Métis, and that our town is home to a large and diverse community of Indigenous peoples. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order again and ask that we all take a few moments to think of those people who find themselves in distress as a result of COVID and COVID-related matters. Thank you. With that, I'll ask if there are any declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing Councillor Main.
Sorry, I'm going to be declaring a conflict of interest specifically on the public art item, and I can speak to the public art policy at a high level. So I'll be declaring a conflict as part of the budget next week on that one particular item, but I will be able to speak to the public art policy in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other conflicts to declare? Seeing none. Sorry. So we, seeing no conflicts, we're in a closed session prior to public meeting, and I have some motions arising from the business in the closed session, so I'll read those into the record and ask for a vote. The first is moved by Councillor Gordon and seconded by Councillor Prost. The staff report CSR 2021-6 156 Marina Park Avenue settlement dated February 17th, 2021 be received for information, and 1, that council directs staff to do all things necessary and execute all required documents in order to accept the recommended settlement offer as presented. Council, you've heard the motion. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimously. Second, I have a motion by Councillor Cunningham and seconded by Councillor McGinn. The council receive as information the verbal report provided by the mayor and CAO at the closed meeting session of council held February 17th, 2021 regarding the Shelter Now supportive housing project, and further that council support the request in principle pending confirmation of participation by other parties in the manner by which they have indicated they would participate. Comments or questions by council on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. That too carries unanimously. And finally, the last matter arising from the closed session is moved by Deputy Mayor Ross and seconded by Councillor Olszewski. The council receive as information the verbal report provided by the Executive Director of Corporate Services Town Solicitor at the closed meeting session of council held February 17th, 2021 regarding the litigation update respecting Midland Police Services. All those in, Council, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries, and please note, Madam Clerk, that Councillor Gordon recused himself on that vote. And now we have approval of the agenda. So I have a motion here by Councillor Downer, moved by and seconded by Deputy Mayor Ross, that items and related recommendations contained within the February 17th, 2021 consent agenda as consent items having been considered by council be adopted with the exception of item 10.4.3 CSR-2021-8 Huronia Airport 2019 Strategic Development Plan Next Steps, which will be considered under section 15, reports and other items withdrawn from consent agenda for council's consideration. So before I ask for a vote, I have Councillor Gordon. And
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
No, please.
Yeah, and then I think Councillor Main had his sign up. I don't have my signs with me tonight at work. I didn't request to pull anything, but I did want to speak to a couple of the items. So I'll just go down the list. The one is in our CI Council Information Package from the 29th of January. Busy Bee Taxi, one of our local businesses, who I'm sure everyone's familiar with, put a request in for us to consider stop signs at Bay and First to make it a four-way stop. And as is sort of typical when things go into the CI, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. That's typical when things go in the CIP. It's up to us to do something with it, pull it out, or just, off it goes into oblivion. So I read these things, and I just had a question for staff. What, are they looking for our direction to do anything with this, or is this just like listening to a guy tell us something in a coffee shop? So I'll start with that one. If we're going to be considering this request.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Through your worship to Councillor Gordon, we have to bring forward to council a traffic calming policy. And so we have likely half a dozen requests that we have to evaluate right now. So what we're going to be doing is bringing that policy forward and then bringing all these requests that we have to date as a, that trial run through that policy. And I hope to bring that either the last meeting in March or into April. We'll bring all these requests because we have 3 or 4, and tonight there's another speed reduction request on the agenda for later tonight. So I think it's better we look at it from a policy and just bring all these issues together at once, if that's the will of council.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Yep, makes perfect sense to me. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure we talked about it, so he knew that we read these things and do something about it. My next question is on the public art policy, and I have a few comments after reading it. First of all, I think it's really amazing that our staff was able to secure grant funding for some of the stuff on King Street, and $100,000 at least year one earmarked from that grant for art. So that's cool. And we've all seen the public art installation, or probably those of you who've gone to Penetanguishene, seen the big shiny ball on the hill that just refuses to roll down the hill. What I'm wondering, I got a few questions on this one. Is it possible that we end up with one public art installation that consumes a whole 100K, or is there some kind of mandate that I couldn't maybe missed that says, we're going to pick a few different locations and different types, and then you allow for more variety and putting a cap on, how much it is per? I guess my only concern is we may end up with, and I get art is in the eye of the holder, $100,000 for a bunch of wooden crates painted different colors out front of town hall, kind of like what happened in Barrie. Not belittling that as art. It isn't to me, but that doesn't mean it isn't to someone else. I'm just wondering though, that 100K, can we spread it around, and if there's a plan for that? So that's one question. I just hate to go on and on, but I'm going to just pound through these questions. Hopefully they make sense. The secondly, are we going to be sourcing from local artisans, or are we going to the broader public market? It wasn't clear to me that we're putting any kind of locality around sourcing this. I understand we're challenged from doing that for bids for construction and stuff, but this is our art installation. We should be focusing on our local artisans if possible. And also it says, how would $100,000 worth of art in a public setting be insured for $140 plus tax? It just something that stuck out to me, that with our insurance going bananas everywhere, as people see in the budget draft, that it would only be $140 to insure a $100,000 art installation. I want to make sure that wasn't a typo. I do have three more, but maybe I should break it up into two asks of three questions. If anyone can comment on those first three.
Who would care to comment on the,
So the first one was about, can it all be in one bucket, or can we have multiple pieces of art? That was the first one.
Ms. Coco?
Hi,
Or
through
Campbell.
your turn to Councillor Gordon. I believe the intent when Karen was drafting the policy was to try to be as inclusive as possible and to not limit the different pieces of public art that would be considered. So in response to the first two of your questions, I don't foresee all of that money being spent on one piece of art, because I think it's kind of contrary to the intent of the overall policy and engaging local artists and trying to have as much input as possible. And also the creation of a group that would review the public art pieces in order to make determinations. And in terms of the insurance question, she actually did go through our insurer to get a quote so that it was adequate and making sure that we are covered. And also that's in addition to the fact that whoever is bringing the art forward is going to be responsible for that up and until the point of installation as well.
Okay, that's a bargain. Okay, my next three is section 2, where it says the policy states that the art on temporary loan will become part of the town art inventory. That's probably not what you meant. It sounds like everything else in that paragraph, they're basically giving it to the town and it becomes ours. But just the way it literally reads right now, if somebody temporarily loaned us some art, it reads like it becomes ours instead of us, giving it back, which sort of doesn't align with the word loan or temporary. So I'm just wondering if that's just wordsmithing needed. And same thing with deaccessioned art. There's a word I'd have to look up. Never even knew it was a word. It says we'll notify the artist when council deems that the art is, ready to be put out to pasture. But it doesn't give us any option, or the artist any option, to come and reclaim their art, take it back. I get we've already paid for it. Maybe they deleted it, but rather than just saying, hey, we're about to rip down your paint over your mural or something, it'd be nice to give them the opportunity to come and get it. Not a mural, that's a silly example, but you know what I mean. I had one more, but it's actually, I answered my own question in my head. So those are the last two, mostly around wordsmithing.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody care to answer the councillor's question?
Andy, are you taking this one?
You're welcome to.
I'll take either one.
You don't have to really answer me. I'm just drawing it out for you. That's the way I read it. And I'm just concerned that, if somebody wanted to hold us to it, literally, it's, they lent us some art and we're like, it says right here, we own it. So just wanted to call it out.
And there may through the chair to Councillor Gordon, there may very well need to be take a closer look at the wording that came through. Sometimes editing can cause some issues. And my understanding is that ultimately we would own the artwork at the end of the day. However, the artist would maintain their artistic rights, if you will, to that artwork. So if we need to take that back and you'd like us to wordsmith a bit before it goes through, we can do that. Or we can perhaps do an amendment after this goes through and bring it through at the next council. Sure.
My only concern was around temporary loan. That would seem to be the outlier in that statement. But I will leave it to my peers. We can edit this thing whenever. It's something that popped out when I was reading it with my critical lenses on.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks.
I have Councillor Main and then Councillor McGinn. And I think the cat wants to speak.
Cat, careful.
Is it me?
You're next, absolutely.
All right. Okay, so one item on the consent agenda that's also worth noting is a letter from a resident thanking us, one, for not only doing King Street rejuvenation, reconstruction, and separating our combined sewers, but also she wanted to thank us for extending, which we didn't do, the County of Simcoe did, which we're partners with, on the corridor for 93, the 93 Complete Street program. And so having sidewalks up there, there's stores in town that were not accessible by pedestrians. And so, people who are just mobile on just feet only, very appreciative of those sidewalks extension. So I want to say thank you for writing that letter, thanking us. So we can't take all the credit. The county of Simcoe took a lot of the work. So on to the other two items. The one thing I really like, the public art policy, it's great now that we have enacted this. I remember talking with the executive director of the Quest School, who also happened to be named Karen Mealing. It may or may not be the same person. But one thing that's great about it is obviously the high-end stuff is your sculptures, which are much more permanent. But one thing is great is the temporariness of public art. And so obviously Midland has a huge history of murals. Unfortunately, our murals do have an expiry date, so we have to continue to refresh them, renew them, and sometimes we might let them retire. There is new opportunities to be putting colorful paint and art all over the place, and it actually, a lot of municipalities are incorporating public art into their complete street policies so that a bus stop is also a public art, or a bike rack is also a cool little public art. And you integrate art because it's not trying to make the streets nice for cars to walk on, it's making your streets nice for pedestrians, for shoppers, and you put art in your parks, you put art in your downtown, and you really just try to liven up the place. So I like that we really touches on a lot of things that are it's very inclusive. So I think that's the most success that the town of Midland is going to be doing is, renewing our murals, but also looking at putting paint on the ground. I know the Paint the Park project that we did a couple years ago with some high school students, that's still there, and you still see people coming back year in, year out, adding more designs and putting paint on the ground. But what you're also now seeing is paint as traffic calming. And so you see paint now spilling out into the roadway. And so this is where Andy Campbell is, he has steam coming in his ears, because we have a higher level of standard when paint is now in the road. And so the city of Hamilton's actually developed a decorated crosswalk guideline. And so you can actually have, conventional pedestrian crosswalks, but then also add a little splash of color to make it lively, but it also is still functioning as a crosswalk. So the engineers have, safety regulated roadways. So there's a lots of opportunities for here. And to Councillor Gordon's point, a big, awesome sculpture like a cool swan down at your harbor front is always cool, but also we can put a little bit of paint here and there. So the flexibility of that and the experience of the staff that we have, I think this is going to be a great initiative. And for people who are obviously heavily scrutinizing us for amount of money that we're spending, a lot of this money is from grants. So it's not something that we're spending frivolously this is grant money. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to make a quick point on the Ontario Municipal report. That was very eye-opening, seeing the different level of analysis of how much the municipal government transfers to the lower tier municipalities. And at AMO conferences, a lot of people have talked years and years how the province has been downloading and then giving less and less money to lower tier municipalities. So it's great when we have this analysis and the data to kind of show maybe the province needs to, to use an outdated reference, show us the money. So I very much appreciate that report. So thank you again for all the hard work from staff, and greatly appreciate these reports.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Councillor McGinn.
So I briefly wanted to speak to, art on loan. And I can personalize here that my grandmother was an artist and she has art that is in a museum, and I have some of her originals. I also own some original art, and I'm not talking about just my children's art. I'm talking about artists who make their living doing this. So I may own the piece, and for one specific one, they kept it in their collection. I got the first print, and they're allowed their artistic integrity to make prints and to showcase it. So it was just that personalization that I thought perhaps that has to do with some of the language around an artist continuing to own their piece, but you have it, or you have, print one. It was just an arrangement that I made with the artist. That's all I wanted to say. And I think it's fantastic that we're going down this route. And it's really nice to hear Councillor Main, talking with such passion.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree. Councillor Cunningham or the cat, whichever.
I think I'll take it. My cat is sometimes incomprehensible. I just wanted to point out in our council information package Feb 1 to 5, the Cultural Alliance final report on the cultural conference that we had. It was an impressive endeavor. And we had Fred Hacker, Karen Mealing, Rogers TV, a ton of volunteers working together to bring 8 sessions online through Zoom to our artisans, our creative community, the creative community organizations that support them. It went fabulously well. It was a surprising initiative. And in addition, all of those pieces were recorded by Rogers TV so that they can stand in perpetuity or until we replace them on the website. But you can find them at culturalalliance.ca. You'll find the conference link right there in the top menu. You can also have a look at how much more beautiful our site is getting every time you go back to it. And click on that link, you'll find each of the presentations is annotated, but beneath each one, you'll see watch this session now. So you can have a look and see some of the inspirational ideas that came up about how do we cope with COVID in a world where, you know, you really needed to be out there performing and networking and getting in front of others through fairs and art shows. And some pretty unique ideas came up that will actually withstand the test of time, because some of the innovation that we're seeing because of COVID is going to make these businesses stronger afterwards as well. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, you don't necessarily have to read the CIP. You can hop right over to culturalalliance.ca and click through the recordings.
Thank you, Councillor. I would just like to, Councillor Main touched on it, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Funding. The CAO, I just wanted to see if he had anything he'd like to put out there with respect to this before we move along. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and no, thank you for the comments from Councillor Main as well. It was certainly the intent of staff and myself to make sure that some of the facts around OMPF funding were made available. Certainly, as we look at the budget process, I know there's a repeated concern being expressed in the community about tax rates in some communities like ours. And one of those elements that needs to be understood is the historical context of funding that have been given to municipalities. And the OMPF is the lifeline for so many municipalities. Very small ones like the one that I came from, that's really their only primary concern of funding. So for a small community up in Northern Ontario with a population of 5,000 people, it's not unusual to see OMPF funding of multi-million dollars because that's all they have. And they have to pay for all those services. In Southern Ontario, or at least the near north, like where we are, there's a bit of disparity, as you can see, depending on your classification between rural, where you stand with in terms of your assessment value relative to the province, on what amount of funding you can get. And quite frankly, your proximity to the GTA and mass transit plays a lot into this as well, certainly from the assessment side. If you happen to be in that particular strike zone where you are deemed rural, but still close to Toronto and still have access to mass transit, you can still participate in the OMPF funding. That's not incorrect, that's just how the system works. If, however, you happen to be a little off the beaten track, like Midland, if you're not designated rural to any great extent, like Midland, and if you have economic factors that don't allow you to participate in some of those other financial considerations for funding, then you get relatively small funding to other areas. And some of those areas are quite close to us. So when you compare tax rates of Midland to some of your neighbors, it is a fact you must consider when you look at that. And that type of funding, as is illustrated in the document, adds up significantly over time. The data that was given was over the last 9 years. It's publicly available. You can get as much detail as you like. but it does show a pretty wide differential between a number of communities. So again, I hope you found that useful. I think it is important context as we look at budget deliberations and what we need to do. And that was certainly the purpose of it.
Thank you, Mr. Deneau. Are there any other comments with respect to the consent agenda? Seeing none, I think we are aware of what the motion was. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That also carries. With that, I have a motion to move into closed, moved by Councillor Prost, seconded by Councillor Gordon, that the contents of the regular council with closed session agenda for February 17th be approved. Sorry, the approval of the agenda. Any comments around the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. That carries. And now we have the motion to move into closed, which is moved by Councillor McGinn, seconded by Councillor May, that the council resolved in the committee of the whole. Again, all those in favor. Thank you very much. And that carries. So over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Welcome everyone this evening. We have no presentations, but we do have two deputations. The first one coming from Waypoint Center, update on the COVID-19 community relief efforts and information on the Youth Wellness Hub. I'd like to welcome Ms. Lambie, President and CEO of Waypoint, to present. Ms. Lambie, thank you very much for coming. Hope you're doing well and enjoying all the snow we're getting.
I think my husband's enjoying it less than I am even. Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of Council, for the opportunity to just provide an update this evening on sort of activities at Waypoint. And I'm assuming that you have the slide deck, so.
And I'll ask if we could keep it to 10 minutes, that'd be wonderful. And we please stick around, we'll have some questions for you after.
All right.
Thanks, Ms. Lambie.
Well, I'll do my best. So some of you may know more about Waypoint and others. Just a quick overview. Waypoint is a specialty mental health hospital, just over 300 beds, and serving the region up north as far as Parry Sound, to the west to Dufferin County. And also just about half of those beds are the province's only high secure forensic mental health program for serving only adult males. We also have outpatient and community programs. We have the Waypoint Research Institute, somewhere between 1,200 and 1,300 staff with a whole variety of clinicians as well as other support staff, and with an annual budget of just over $150 million and many staff living locally. We are a substantial economic driver in the region. And then turning to the next slide, whoever is controlling that somewhere behind the curtain, all of presentations around healthcare these days certainly are talking about the COVID pandemic. I think we all know that mental health is a very important part of our overall health. And I'm sure you've all heard the statistic, the 1 in 5 number have experienced mental health challenges. But you can see from the statistics on this slide that was our sort of baseline. And now we've got 40% of Canadians saying their mental health has deteriorated since March 2020, the beginning, the sort of onset of the pandemic. Youth are impacted, social isolation and working at home, certainly factors. There's really no facet of our lives that's been untouched by the pandemic. And so seeing increasing cases of anxiety and depression, and then also addiction. So the bottom two statistics relating to overdose rates as well as consumption of alcohol. So how are we responding to COVID-19? On to the next slide, thank you. As a hospital, we've been part of the overall hospital system planning to respond to COVID. And we've also, as a hospital, had to plan and respond to the pandemic ourselves to ensure that public health and infection prevention and control measures are in place to keep both our patients and our staff safe. I'm sure you can imagine the government directives, public health advice and recommendations have been coming fast and furious to us over the past year. And as more is learned about the virus, those directives and directions to us change. We've been very fortunate that we had the physical space to be able to create an isolation unit. Not all hospitals have had that ability, but all of our new admissions go into that unit and they can be tested and screened for COVID before they would move to the unit that they were heading for. We have, like all of our other hospital partners, suspended visits. We're screening everyone who does come into the building. We have many staff working from home. And one of the things, we heard someone talking earlier around innovation and creativity coming out of COVID. We've seen a tremendous use in virtual care and also use of technology. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Certainly, we appreciate how hard our staff have been working over this past year. The compassionate care that they deliver to our patients, our clients in the community and families, even under these very challenging circumstances, is really nothing short of inspiring. And we thank them every day for the care that they bring to our clients. We have, as you would know from the media, and on to the next slide, thank you. We've had 2 outbreaks at Waypoint, one on our AWENDA program, which is one of the provincial forensic programs, and currently an outbreak on our Horizon program, which is our seniors geriatric program. We're very fortunate, healthcare providers and seniors, residents primarily of long-term care and retirement homes, have been able to receive the vaccination. So we've had nearly half of our staff be vaccinated, and some of our patients are geriatric patients as well as some longer stay patients. We're hoping to have the remainder vaccinated in the next tranche as supply becomes available. It's very important for us to be caring for the caregivers. So we're making sure that we're supporting our staff as well as our patients with coping and wellness support related to the pandemic. And so as a mental health provider, we have internal resources that we're using for this. We have a traumatic incident support team, a very robust employee wellness program, mindfulness programs, and a spiritual care team that is able to provide support. We also recognize it's important to be in regular communication with our staff and patients and families and all other stakeholders. And so we've been posting updates regularly on our website. So on to the next slide. Just before the pandemic, when everything in our lives changed, Waypoint had just launched our brand new strategic plan with the strategic directions of serve, discover, and lead. So I thought I would just touch on a few things, and some of these are also related to COVID, but under the heading of each of our strategic directions. So certainly under serve, we're making sure that we are playing our role in the healthcare system, talking about the need for mental health services. We have been planning for surge and adding bed capacity. And we're also looking at what we're learning as we go through this pandemic. All hospitals would have had pandemic plans, we did, but certainly there's nothing like living through one to update and provide quality improvement on the plan that you have, and we have done that. We are supporting system capacity. So we've added 2 new medical directors, one around family, children, and youth, Dr. Rob Meter, and the other is yet to come. We've recruited, he and his wife both coming to the area in the next few months, and he will be our director of community care. Also, a huge thank you to the town of Midland and the county of Simcoe as well for being wonderful partner in order to see the community health hub come to fruition. It was a long time in the planning and a long time in the building, but we got it done. Unfortunately, with COVID, we weren't able to celebrate the opening as we would have liked to, or see it as a wonderful physical gathering place that it will become, I'm sure. But we were really pleased to be able to get that completed. One of the things about healthcare is it's important to make sure that you are providing evidence-based care to be able to provide the best outcomes for your clients. And so one of our quality improvement initiatives, which is a provincial one, is providing cognitive behavioral therapy for psychosis and family intervention to our patients and families. We're also ensuring, as I mentioned earlier, our employee health, safety, and wellness. And so we do have a psychologically healthy workplace plan that we're in about probably year 4 of implementation of. And we've recently partnered with Yale we've undertaken a survey on staff engagement and burnout, and are just working through implementing initiatives that will address the results of that. I did mention earlier talking about using technology, and I just wanted to use as an example of SERVE one of the initiatives that our specialized geriatric services leaders have been implementing and looking at connectivity in long-term care. It really is just heartwarming. We know that digital technology doesn't replace human touch, but it can really help residents feel less isolated. And certainly that is one of the factors that we've considered during this pandemic over the last year. And there have been stories of an elderly man who now playing guitar music on the technology, but also playing his guitar, which he had not been doing. And a woman who was nonverbal, only spoke Korean. That was her native tongue. And they started playing music and movies in Korean for her, and she became alert and awake and making sounds. So really just some great stories of being innovative during the pandemic. In terms of Discover, I mentioned our research institute, which has been around for about 40 years, but certainly we're continuing to build and do work on that, building on that front. We're doing research related to the pandemic. One of them is a Stop COVID project. And it's studying our pandemic response to make improvements, again, a quality improvement initiative as we go through. We're also in partnership with Georgian College undertaking an ECHO study, and you can see on the screen there what that stands for. And it is about looking at a mindfulness program, providing that for 4 weeks and comparing that 4-week version to the longer version, and hoping that the effects are similar, because then we will be able to provide that program to many more people. The longer version is 3 months. So you can see information about that on our website and register there if anyone's interested, or share that with others. We do have a new director of research starting with us on March the 1st. His name is Christopher Canning, and he is a leader in research in Canada. Previously has been at the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and also worked in international mental health contexts. So we're really pleased to have him come to us. And we're currently recruiting, in partnership with the University of Toronto, a chair position in forensic mental health research to continue to build on our leadership role in forensic mental health. And then on to LEAD, last slide. Many of you may have heard of Ontario Health Teams, and certainly there are quite a number of them across the province. There's one locally for North Simcoe. We are a leader in the Central Ontario Health Team for specialized populations, and it supports a broader region. North Simcoe would be one of the OHTs that we would partner with. And the intent here is there's just not enough specialists that every Ontario Health Team could have all the specialists that they need. And so in partnership, we would provide specialist service to other Ontario Health Teams and their patients and clients that they are caring for. We've also been a leader, one of 4 hospitals, running a demonstration project for the last 3 or 4 years on Ontario structured psychotherapy. It is one of the flagship programs of the provincial government's mental health and addiction strategic plan. And that pilot program was very successful, and it is currently now being expanded to cover right across the province. We did move, I'm not sure the sign's up there yet, but we did move some of our folks providing structured psychotherapy to offices on Jones Road in Midland. And then lastly, I've mentioned several times that we're supporting healthcare workers, not only our own, but across the province. We're one of 5 hospitals in total providing a COVID frontline wellness. And so this is for frontline workers, can access this. And it is done virtually and very, very needed for healthcare workers who, after a year of working in a pandemic, are really very much needing support. So with that, I hope I didn't go beyond my time. I want to thank you for making mental health a priority, and really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you about the work that we're doing.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Lambie, and please stick around. I believe we may have a few questions from Council. Council, any questions with regards to Ms. Lambie's presentation? I see Councillor Prost, and I'll go to Councillor Main.
Thank you for your presentation. That was very informative. But I do have a question. How's the Youth Hub managing through the pandemic?
Well, like everything else we're doing, they're doing things in a different way. Some good news, though, it was a demonstration or a pilot project as well, and we only had funding for that for 3 years. It's been confirmed, again, as part of the provincial strategic mental health and addictions plan. We will have ongoing funding. And so they have, and youth, of course, from my vantage of greater years than youth, youth are very much used to doing things digitally. And so that is what they've done. They've got a lot of virtual programs, lots of activities. They've got a monthly calendar every month that outlines what is available. And they've been reaching out and making connections through schools as well. So they've had to modify what it is they're doing and how they're doing it. But the good news is there's ongoing funding, so that will continue. And you know, as we move out of the pandemic, they'll look at more probably traditional methods of providing care. But it is, I'm not sure how much you know about it, but it is beyond providing service in mental health and addictions or substance use. There's also primary care. So we're funded for a nurse practitioner, housing, education, employment, peer support. So it really is a wraparound service. So we're thrilled that we've got ongoing funding for it.
That's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Pre-pandemic, I'd been there a few times, and it's a fantastic program. I'm glad to see it's still around.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Councillor Main?
Thank you. My point was it was the same about the Youth Hub. I just want to make a quick comment. I was speaking to a high school teacher today who made note that the youth are really struggling, and anything that we can do to give them some recreation. You know, we're talking. A lot of people are emailing us about the rec center. And the question, I guess, for the Youth Hub is there a way to ramp up programming? I know you said that the Youth Hub has connected with the high schools. That's excellent. It just there's just a lack of something to do. And as you're saying, we're increasing digital programming, and I think people are kind of getting to the point where they're getting a bit of COVID fatigue, of digital fatigue, staring at screens all day long. So I very much appreciate all the efforts, especially the Youth Hub. It's just a great, we got a little tour of it. It's fantastic. But I guess further to that, I guess it's just dependent on funding. The Youth Hub is reliant on funding.
Well, as I said, Councillor Main, we were really thrilled to find out there were, I think, 10 youth hubs across the province, and we submitted an application, and we were thrilled to be one of the pilot sites chosen. Initially, those hubs were funded for 10 hubs, 3 years. And that funding was running out. So in the provincial plan, Youth Wellness Hubs is another one of their foundational programs, and we will receive, beginning April 1st, ongoing funding for the hub. So it's not so much conditional on funding. I mean, we'll have to live within that budget, but it's conditional, being able to do things other than virtually. So, as you recall, schools were closed and then everything was shut down. And then, so they've been trying to roll with what they can do in terms of the COVID restrictions. I would just like to say that Waypoint has been the lead organization for the hub, but there's many partners involved in the hub, New Path and CMHA, Chigamic, our Patient Client and Family Council, Youth Haven. So Girls and Boys Club, a lot of partners working together to reach the youth.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Councillor Gordon?
Thanks for your presentation, Carol. It's always nice to see you. I just had a quick question for you. And for those of you who don't understand why I'm going to ask this, I worked at Waypoint as a contractor weekly in the forensic unit with some of the people that have spent their entire adult lives there. Watched them come and go. Some people died, some people got released, some people released and came back. But long story short is I formed a bit of a therapeutic alliance, if you will, while doing the technical work that I was doing one-on-one with the patients. And I'm just, this year, obviously I haven't done it. The contract ended after 20 years and the pandemic kicked in. But I never even got to say goodbye to anybody there. And if any of them are watching, I just wanted to say, thanks for the memories and hope everyone's doing well. But Carol, the question to you is, how has the forensic units fared with COVID-19? From what I'm seeing on the papers, it looks like they've been spared thus far. Just wondering if any of the people that I knew and worked with for the years are doing okay.
We did have a smaller outbreak on one of the provincial forensic programs, the WENDA. There were 2 patients and 2 staff. I'm pleased to say all have recovered.
That's great. Well, if you could, next time you're doing the walking the floors, maybe just say hi to me or hi from me to the usual suspects. You'll know who I'm talking about.
Yes, and thanks very much for all of your service. I know the patients really appreciated that work. So
well, I do miss them. Anyway, hope thinking about them all.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Mayor Strathern?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Earlier it was mentioned, you mentioned, Carol, the North Simcoe Ontario Health Team. I know that there's been a lot of work towards the creation of that. And I'm just wondering, is it now an actual Ontario Health Team, or are we still in the approvals process? And your role in that?
Okay, you may be talking about the North Simcoe Ontario Health Team.
Yes.
And the lead organizations in that are Georgian Bay General Hospital, Chigamic, and Wendat Family Health Team. I do also sit on that steering committee for that Ontario Health Team. And they are working through the various stages of the process of their application. The Ontario Health Team that Waypoint leads is actually recognized as an innovative model in the province, and it's intended to serve a much greater geography and also support multiple Ontario Health Teams. So we work with Ontario Health, the one in North Simcoe, but also Barrie, Aurelia, Muskoka. I'm sure I'm missing some, and then some to the south as well. So The Ontario health teams for the more local geography, like North Simcoe, Muskoka, or North Simcoe, is intended to integrate primary care, so family health team, home and community care, and hospital care. Whereas the one that we are leading is providing specialized services. So for example, again, children and youth, we have our medical director works with the primary care physicians, and what they do is look at, it's called a stepped care model of care, so that the first level of care, primary care, would be provided by youth family physician. But if they need specialized care, then Dr. Meter would either provide some advice and counsel to the primary care physician, or provide some care to the client and then transfer the client back to the family physician. So it's working in tandem with those multiple Ontario health teams. So I don't know if that helps, Mayor.
It does. Thank you. And it's nice to see the reach that you have across multiplicity of health teams. It speaks volumes of the value of the institution and your people.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? I see none. Thank you very much, Waypoint and Ms. Lambie, for coming this evening. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much. Always appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Stay
well. Your family. All right. Next up on the agenda, we have a petition from Midland Point Road speed reduction. I believe we have Ms. Dupuis. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that is correct.
Ms. Dupuis, I thank you for coming this evening. I'll remind you that you have 10 minutes, and please stick around. We may have a couple of questions with regards to your presentation after.
Perfect.
Thank you for coming. It's all yours. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. So I first want to thank you for welcoming me here tonight. So my name is Carly Dupuis, and I've lived on Midland Point Road for about 6.5 years now. Through most of this time, the speed of traffic on our road has been a common discussion in the neighborhood. And we're in an active community that spends a lot of time walking, biking, and accessing the trails that are connected to our road. On behalf of myself and the residents who have signed my petition, we are requesting to have the Midland Point Road speed limit reduced from 50 kilometers an hour down to a reduced speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour between Fuller Avenue up to and including 764 Midland Point Road. We feel that this is the most effective solution to reducing the speed of traffic on our road. I did not include the section past 764 Midland Point Road in my petition, but I did have residents on that section reach out to me that they would like it mentioned, that they are not sure why the speed limit has to increase to 60 kilometers further down the road near Glenbrook Drive, and they would like to also see that reduced to 50 kilometers an hour. So the petition that I presented to my neighbors reads, we, the residents of Midland Point Road, do hereby petition the City of Midland to reduce the existing speed limit of 50 kilometers per hour to 40 kilometers per hour from Fuller Avenue up to including 764 Midland Point Road. Petition includes the signatures of the residents who reside on the section of road in question. Members from 31 out of the 37 households on Midland Point Road in the section that we're discussing have signed the petition. The 6 houses missing were either due to households in the moving process or I was unable to contact them, making support for this request virtually unanimous. I only reached out to residents on this particular section of road, but we did have additional signatures due to some local residents in the area having heard about the petition and just having a special interest in wanting to be included. So 52 residents in total have signed the petition. The residents who have signed are in consensus that the speed of traffic on Midland Point Road can be excessive and dangerous. The annual average daily traffic on Midland Point Road was most recently documented at 800 to 1,200 vehicles per day. And obviously the closer to Fuller Avenue you get, the higher that number is. And also this is also increased in the summer months with seasonal residents. The speed control problem on Midland Point Road has been a chronic problem. The more I have spoken to my neighbors, I've realized that this has been an ongoing concern for at least 50 years. We feel that 50 kilometers an hour is too fast, especially because most vehicles on this section of road travel well in excess of the speed limit. Our road is a long, straight stretch of road, making it tempting for motorists to push the speed limit, followed by a fairly sharp curve in the hill, on a hill that many motorists don't reduce their speed while navigating. Many residents have reported the speed concern to the OPP to attempt to increase police presence in the area, but this has not seemed to help the problem. The gravel shoulders on Midland Point Road are currently poor and in many areas degrading, making it hazardous for pedestrians to walk on them, leaving us often to walk on the roadway. Even with potential infrastructure improvements to Midland Point Road, this will not reduce the speed of traffic. The curve on the road just past Portage Park Lane creates difficulties in residents entering and exiting their driveways due to speeding traffic. This was described to me many times as dangerous. Residents turning onto Midland Point Road from Portage Park Lane, so making a left-hand turn, have expressed that this can also be, and I quote, dangerous trying to get out of Portage Park Lane, especially with the hill on your right-hand side as you enter Midland Point Road. Cars come flying over the hill and they're on you before you know it. Common feedback that has been reducing the speed limit is long overdue, and that there's concern for the safety of children, pedestrians, and pets. The residents are concerned that someone will seriously get hurt if the problem is not addressed. There have been many comments about cars leaving the roadway due to speed and weather, also about pets being hit by vehicles. I've heard stories of elderly residents driving and using their cars to visit with direct neighbors across the road from them in fear of not being able to cross the road in time on foot safely. Some residents up on the corner on Midland Point Road also shovel paths between their houses so that they don't have to navigate the roadway on foot in fear of it not being safe. While reducing the speed limit may not fully solve the problem, the consensus is that if the speed limit is reduced by 10 kilometers an hour, hopefully the honest drivers will also follow this, and hopefully the individuals that are speeding will reduce their speed accordingly by 10 kilometers an hour. The neighborhood has changed, especially recently. There are much more young families with children in the neighborhood playing, walking, and accessing the school bus stops. The majority of traffic on our road is residents, delivery services, and casual drivers. It's also good to mention that the town of Midland cares for and promotes Golly Park, making it not just the immediate residents in our neighborhood that access the park and trails. The flow of traffic needs to not only support the safety of the immediate residents, but also the people that use the area for leisure and recreation. Often residents use the section of Midland Point Road between Fuller and Portage Park to complete a loop when we're walking through the trails to Golly Park. So our roads need to be safe. I have a personal interest in this matter because I have a family with 2 young boys. We go out walking on a daily basis. Trying to navigate a stroller on the road is a challenge at best. I want this wonderful community that I'm proud to be a part of to feel safer for both myself and my boys. The speed traffic is not just an occasional concern on our road. You just have to spend a couple minutes on the road to recognize that it's a serious problem. It's not uncommon to see vehicles traveling at least 80 kilometers an hour down our road. That's most of everything. I did provide another copy of all of this to, I think, most of you, including the petition and a few comments from residents, which I think I mostly covered. So I want to take just this time to thank you for considering this request and in reducing the speed limit to hopefully to 40 kilometers an hour from Fuller to 764 Midland Point Road, and hope that we can come to a solution to improve the safety in the neighborhood. And I hope to look forward to hearing your thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dupuy. It's never easy coming to council, but I want to give you credit. Great presentation, and good for you for getting all your neighbors to sign the petition. I got to congratulate you on that, and you did a great job. So please stick around for a few questions. I see Councillor Bocheski, Councillor May, and then I'll go to Councillor Cunningham. Perfect. And we may have a few other questions for you, so don't leave yet.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Olszewski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, great presentation, great petition. I'm not sure if you saw the Lakewood Drive petition that went through.
Yes, I did.
But yeah, we're right at the end of Midland Point Road, and we were successful in getting the 40-kilometer-an-hour change done. So that's great.
Yes.
Since that, even during this meeting, I had another resident traffic concern, and I asked them to tune in. So hopefully that resident's watching as well.
Okay.
It sounds like from earlier in the meeting, we have we definitely do have a traffic calming study coming to council. And it was heard earlier that there's 6 items on the list of things to be looked at. So I think this is a great one to add. Not that there's no sense of urgency to, yes, we got 7 now. So not that there's no sense of urgency. We could certainly draft a motion tonight to make this happen. But I think if we do that, we'll have another street tomorrow and another street in a week. While I do support this, and I'm certainly sensitive to your family, I drive the street at least twice a day. And I do need it to be stroller ready in 5 months when I'll be pushing a stroller as well. So I certainly support this, and thank you so much for bringing this to council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chesky. And maybe Midland could be the second community in Ontario to switch their whole township to 40 kilometers an hour. Maybe something to consider. And I'd like to, maybe we need a motion to bring that forward at some point. Councillor Main.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my parents still live on Glenbrook. I grew up ripping up and down Midland Point, and I think it must have been the 90s when it was 60 in the entire corridor, and I believe the first portion was dropped down to 50. I think it might have been the late 90s, early 2000s, and I think this issue is really kind of is a leftover issue because the number one determinant of speed is the lane width, and so Midland Point is a rural-built township road that's but now we have a built-up residential area. Now it's a residential neighborhood, but you have an old-style country road that rips right through a neighborhood, and there's no sidewalks, as you mentioned. So paved shoulders, bike lanes, and stuff like that would be very helpful. But really, at the end of the day, if you have wide lanes, you're going to have high speed. So thank you very much for bringing this forward. And the tricky thing is like you got to move cars, and everyone wants to go as fast as they can. But there is definitely you've proven a neighborhood interest in reducing the speeds, and so that always carries more weight is when the neighborhood comes forward and says this is not safe and we're not comfortable. And I think that those are two actually separate things: safety and comfort. And so we have about, I think you mentioned 800 to 1,200 cars, and that's actually quite manageable because if this is a slow numbers of street, then these types of awareness activities might actually help, just with a few signs. But really, you have to kind of do everything with traffic stuff. You got to do a little bit of signage. You got to, write the letter to the newspaper. You got to do the deputation to council, and then you have us to look into it. And then we also have the policing component for enforcement off of really unsafe drivers. So there's a lot of it, and traffic and transportation, it certainly gets my gears going. And so you always have my support for transportation matters. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also want to thank you for coming to council with this, Ms. Dupuy, and for doing so much work. There is a lot of putting yourself out there to go out and talk to your neighbors and reach out to make a change. So I want to congratulate you on doing that and remind people that, Ward 3 is town of Midland and with no sidewalks. and so anything that we can do to make these in-town roads that have no sidewalks safer for the needs of pedestrians, I think we need to hear those. And the fact that you're open to traffic calming and bringing that forward, that sometimes that's a question, well, what will happen? Will people be upset? That you've done that work for us to say, no, people will be quite thrilled. And thank you so much for doing that work. And I'm so glad you got the new link to come in and join us during the meeting after the other link had expired.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Downer. Sorry, Councillor Downer, you're still muted. You're still
holding the space bar works sometimes.
Try to hit maybe the space bar. Oh, we got the boss coming in. Can we unmute Councillor Downer on our end, Madam Clerk?
I've actually been asking him to unmute, and usually there's a pop-up.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Downer, it's in the bottom right-hand or left-hand corner. Are you able to click on that?
There we go.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm just wondering, this problem isn't unique to Midland Point Road, and it just seems to be growing. And I don't know, does the OPP still have a traffic division? Does anybody know that members on our board? Can you answer that for me?
Yeah, I believe they do. Yes, sir.
Well, why aren't we involving these people in enforcement?
It'll definitely.
I mean, if we reduce this area to 40 kilometers, you can look at the whole town coming to us, because I'm hearing complaints, not just from Midland Point Road, 4th Street, other streets in town are having the same issue, and it seems to be growing, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. So maybe we have to lean on our police service a little bit here to do some enforcement. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Downer. I have Councillor McGinn, then I'll go to your worship.
So I think it's multiple things. First, I really want to thank you for coming. I really would like to thank you to it. Yeah, Councillor Cunningham was saying it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of dedication. So thank you for doing that for us, for your community, and for people who don't necessarily live in Ward 3. I really appreciate that. I think there's a couple of, I support this 100%, and to what Deputy Mayor Ross had said, yes, wouldn't that be something else, something fantastic if we just, became another community that said, no, it's 40. And I think that would be amazing. But the issue isn't only the speed limit, it's part of it. I mean, a 10 kilometer per hour reduction in speed for people who abide by the law, and then accidents do sometimes happen, can make a huge difference. So then, the education part is another portion of it. Getting the OPP involved is another portion of it, and that's our responsibility. And I'm really looking forward to talking about that. And there are now 7 things coming up, so your timing is absolutely fantastic.
Great, thank you.
Now I have to find my mute button. It's not here.
Your worship, and then I'll have Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So to Councillor Donner's question, yes, there's a motor vehicles group, and yes, they are running speed traps, and yes, they're getting convictions and writing tickets, citations. But one of the things I do notice is that when they set a trap up, it's not very long before drivers are flashing their lights, and you might just as well pick up your car and move, because the effectiveness just isn't there anymore. And I see that all the time when I'm driving home. I drive Midland Point Road every day. And what I encounter on Midland Point Road is 2 things in particular. Aside from the fact that it's a subdivision that was built under the Tay Township guidelines, and there are ditches there, and open ditches, which really limit the provision of sidewalks, or you put the sidewalks, you just go in onto people's, you put it in on people's front lawns. It's one way or the other. So that creates a problem for pedestrians. I've seen that, but I also see pedestrians creating a problem in that they won't move over. No matter, you're driving along, there's a car coming the other way, you slow down and try to get them to move, and you get some rather rude gestures. And so it's a bit of a 2-way street here. But one thing I do know is that there are people who drive that road who are consistently speeding, same offenders all the time.
Yep.
And it would be nice if people could get a license plate and report that plate to the OPP. I personally, for the last 2 days that I've driven the road because of weather and the lockdown, I've taken it down to 40 kilometers an hour. It doesn't add a lot to the drive. And I actually get to look and see what's going on in the neighborhood, so that's kind of nice. So personally, I would support in at least some way of reducing the speed limit. But I'm not sure how effective that's going to be. To your earlier point, you may get people going from 60 or 70 down to 50 or 60 now.
Right.
But I would ask the pedestrians to be a little more cognizant of the fact that you are walking on a road with no sidewalks. And sometimes there is no option but I can't pull over. If I can, I pull over in the other lane. But sometimes I can't. And then then it gets interesting. Some of the gestures you get from people that look like you're crackers or something. But I think to everybody else's point, thank you for bringing it forward. It is something that's been going on for some time. I know the OPP are aware of some of these hot points. Fuller Avenue is another one. You think about those folks as you drive into town on the west side of the road trying to pull out onto Fuller Avenue. When people are going through there at 80, 85, 90 kilometers an hour because they're either late for work or they're in a hurry to go home because you got to pick the kids up. It's a problem, and it's a psychological problem. I think it's got more to do with people's attitude. People are becoming just, as a consequence of COVID, they're becoming rude. They're becoming rude to their neighbors, and it's very unfortunate. So I guess we'll just have to look at how we're going to slow that down. And I think Councillor Downer's right. We are going to get a lot of requests to slow down the whole town if we keep going at this way, and we will bring it up with Inspector Evans again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you very much, Mr. V, for coming and doing this. We asked for it basically when we got the Lakewood Drive deputation, and I'm constantly urging people to come and do these deputations. I appreciate an email or a petition sent to us and included on the CIP, but nothing's more compelling than having somebody who's passionate about the issue come and talk to us and have us ask questions of you. So again, kudos for being brave enough to do this. It does take some bravery because, it's kind of, you're on TV and there's a bunch of us. You did a great job on the letter. It was very compelling. I'm inclined to support 40 kilometers an hour reduction all throughout the town. It's a symbolic thing. It is going to keep the legal people driving slower. The people that just don't care now are still going to drive fast. They don't care. However, 40 reduction across town does send the message that, first of all, it's going to cost you more if you get a speeding ticket. And I don't see any reason why not to support this. In the meantime, that's a longer ask because we haven't even had that bigger discussion. I doubt, maybe perhaps after this, part of that traffic calming report will include the option of reducing 40, carte blanche across the town. That's part of the equation, as everyone else has said. Policing, honestly, nothing, curbs the weight on your foot like getting pulled over and getting a ticket. Yeah, I know there's ways and people flash lights. That's been going on since the beginning of time, though. All you do is you don't put your regular marked police car out doing radar. You go with an unmarked car. You don't have to park sideways where everyone sees. And the only time you give away your position is when you lit someone up and you're writing up a ticket. Then you go somewhere else. Another option for us is mobile photo radar. That's a spend. We may be able to get some. Yeah, I know. I get it. It is. There may be some grant money for that. Maybe, I don't know. But it's one of those things where the driver of the car doesn't get the ticket, doesn't have demerit points. It basically goes to the owner of the car, and it's just a fine. But that money does, if we run it, a lot of it streams into the municipality. So I'd be supportive of that, at least looking and seeing what it costs. I know other bigger municipalities, it could be something we go in and with our 3 other neighbors and share the cost by having it spread around. We do also have that speed trailer that I don't know, keep it sounding like a broken record. Plow out a little place and deploy the speed trailer, for heaven's sake. I know it's winter, but and I know it snows, but there's got to be places we can put that, and it'll actually count the cars, measure the speeds, and allow us and Mr. Campbell in his report to give us some evidence in the recommendations. So I really would like to see the speed trailer reminding people. And I'm also going to be asking for smaller speed signs that are pole mounted. But I appreciate all of your concerns. I do support them. If the report comes and recommends, or even doesn't recommend, the report comes to us now that you're added onto the list, I will definitely support a speed reduction on your street, but I think we do need to look at this more holistically, because otherwise it will be just street after street after street, neighborhood after neighborhood coming, as they should. And we can either deal with this piecemeal, or we can just tear the Band-Aid off and try and put a solution in for the town. So it's a blended approach. thank you for coming tonight. I support your request wholeheartedly. I'm sad that there isn't a motion right now for us to deal with, but I do agree that because this report's forthcoming, your message was well received by my peers, and I fully expect it to form part of the report when it does come in the next couple months. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Any other questions or comments? Your worship?
Yeah, just a comment, and I'll share this with Councillor Gordon after I'll figure out where I filed it. But there was a report done by Springwater Township. A mobile radar unit is $300,000 plus a bunch of membership fees to a data brokerage consortium out of City of Toronto. So it's quite. If we're looking at doing this, I agree with you. We ought to be looking at our neighbors as well for that sort of thing, because it's and the fixed units are even more expensive. So Springwater looked at it and they threw their hands up in horror and decided they'd back away from it. So, but I thought there was a motion around this somewhere.
I don't have a motion. At this point, but I know Councillor Cunningham.
Yes, thank you. So I did prepare a motion for tonight that essentially is probably going to end up just saying, yes, please include this in the March report. But the motion that I prepared was that further to the email dated January 10, 2021 from Ms. Carly Dupuy and the related petition requesting a reduction in speed limit on Midland Point Road, staff be directed to investigate and bring forward a report with recommendations to a future council meeting for consideration. Now, what I'm hearing from Mr. Campbell this evening is that motion really isn't necessary, as long as I think we are expressing our desire for this item to be included. So if we could just check that with Mr. Campbell, then that's about the extent of what we can do with a motion arising in this fashion.
I have quite confidence that staff has heard us loud and clear, but we will allow Mr. Campbell to answer the question. Mr. Campbell?
Yes, we will include this as part of the discussion of that report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. And congratulations, Ms. Dupuy. I believe you accomplished what you were looking to come to council for. You got us talking about it. We're going to have a report come back to council with more discussion. So thank you so much for your time for coming today, and we greatly appreciate greatly appreciate your coming with the petition, and hopefully we'll get the results that you're looking for.
Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. All the best to you and your family.
Thank you.
All right, next up, council, we have a public meeting with regards to a bylaw amendment at 174 Pillsbury Drive. And I will call this public meeting to order. This public meeting is being held under the Planning Act to consider an application for proposed amendment to the town zoning bylaw respecting 174 Pillsbury Drive. In accordance with the Planning Act, if a person does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submission before the bylaw is passed or approval given, you may not be entitled to appeal the decision at the local planning appeal tribunal. And you may not be added as a party to the hearing on the appeal to the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. The purpose of this public meeting is to hear from residents and to seek clarity on the application. Council is not making a decision on the application or taking position. Staff will report back in the future with a recommendations report. This is the opportunity to speak, and council encourages you to do so. I will now ask the town manager of planning, Candace Bondarchuk, to introduce the applicant, and confirm that any notification or correspondence was received.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, members of council, and the public for tuning into tonight's public meeting presentation. And I'll ask Sherry to bring up the presentation now, please.
Now, could you confirm if we received any correspondence?
I certainly will, Deputy Mayor Ross.
Thank you.
The application before us tonight is for a zoning bylaw amendment under Section 34 of the Planning Act and temporary use bylaw under Section 39 of the Planning Act at the location municipally addressed as 174 Pillsbury Drive. Next slide, please. This is the public meeting notice, as Deputy Mayor Ross requested in accordance with the Planning Act. Notice of complete application and public meeting was provided, and this public meeting affords the public an opportunity to provide comments to be taken into consideration by council and staff. The notices were circulated to residents within a 120-meter radius, published in the local newspaper and online. Next slide, please. This is an aerial map. On the left-hand side is the spring of 2018 aerial photograph. It provides an overview of the context of the surrounding lands. Essentially, for council's review and for the public, you can see there to the north would be the residential component, and the surrounding lands are mostly vacant to the south, industrial lands, woodlot, as well as everyone's familiar, of course, with Mom's Restaurant, and then there's the industrial building just to the west there as well. There's also a zoomed in version on the right-hand side to provide an indication on the location of the current parking and the existing industrial building. Next slide, please. Just wanted to provide council with a street view perspective, which conveys the location of the existing built industrial form on the west side of the proposed subject lands. So you can see also the treed woodlot to the south. Next slide, please. And this is the street view perspective of the existing building, which is subject to this zoning bylaw amendment and temporary use for a childcare facility at 174 Pillsbury Drive. Next slide. This is the current official plan designation. So it is employment area, and there is a residential district to the west. Next slide. Under the town zoning bylaw, the site is zoned currently M1, which permits an array of industrial uses. It does not, however, permit specifically a child care center as defined in the zoning bylaw. However, the new official plan does speak to supportive and ancillary or accessory uses that would complement employment lands, such as gyms, childcare centers, and perhaps this is something we will need to review further during the impending zoning bylaw conformity exercise once the new official plan is in full force and effect. Next slide. This is the site plan, which shows 13 existing parking spaces and accessible space, the general location of the temporary outdoor play area, which includes chain link fencing, bollards to ensure safety is maintained. Next slide. We don't see a whole lot of temporary use bylaws, and I'm not sure if council here has received many in the past, but I want to provide an overview of what a temporary use bylaw is. So it's basically, it's when an applicant wants to develop their property in a way that's not specifically permitted in the zoning bylaw. It allows for a temporary mechanism to allow a permitted use, in this case, a child care center, for a maximum of 3 years, at which time the applicant can come forth at the end of the 3 years and request an extension. Next slide. We did receive public comments, and this is from the owner, Kevin Cannell, who's to the east of the subject lands. He's at 169 Pillsbury Drive, and he is requesting that a fence be erected between the two properties, the entire length of the property line for safety purposes. Mr. Brian McKell is the agent on behalf of the owner, and he is in attendance tonight. He will not be providing a presentation this evening, but is present and would be happy to answer any questions that council may have. So thank you, your worship and council. That concludes the presentation from Planning Services, and I turn it back to Deputy Mayor Ross.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So I mentioned I was to extend an invitation to the applicant or agent to make a presentation, but you're saying they have nothing to provide, is that correct?
For your worship, to Deputy Mayor Ross, that's correct, but Mr. McKell is here to speak if council has any questions.
Wonderful, welcome Mr. McKell. Thank you for coming this evening. Now I will open the meeting to comments from the public. Anyone wishing to comment may call the clerk at 705-526-4275, extension 2208. The number is also being displayed by Rogers Television for those watching. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody that's called in?
No, I do not have anyone at this point.
Wonderful. It's a last call to anyone with regards to application for 174 Pillsbury Drive. I see none. Is that correct, Madam
Hello.
Clerk? Hello.
Can you hear me?
Sir. Yes, sir.
This is Ron Koontz. Brian McKell is having trouble making the Zoom connection.
Okay.
I've managed.
Yeah, Ron, I'm on.
Oh, go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
I'm not sure they want to hear anything from us tonight. We're here to answer questions.
Apologize. Thanks for coming, gentlemen. I don't see that we have any questions at this time. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Not that I'm aware of, no, unless council does have some questions.
Councillor Main, and then I'll go to Councillor Gordon, and we'll bring this public meeting to a close.
Thank you so much. Ms. Bondarchuk, very great to put a face to a name, and it's good to have Mr. McKell back with us. We got some planning superstars with us tonight. All for just a minor matter, which is simply adding a temporary use of daycare at one facility. Two questions. So temporary use 3 years, then we'd have to, do they have to renew, or this is new for us for temporary, so I guess they'd have to request again. And the second question would be, would a daycare be an appropriate use for employment areas under the our current official plan? Thank you.
Mr. McCall, you care to answer, or would turn that over to our planner?
Well, yes, I will attempt to answer that. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Yes, in 3 years, we would be prescribed to apply again for an extension to the temporary use bylaw, and it would, of course, be at council's discretion. We also then may also have the option of applying for a site-specific amendment to permit a daycare center on that property alone. So it wouldn't jeopardize any of the other permitted uses in other industrial areas. As your planner did mention, it may be a matter of consideration when you review your zoning bylaw. The curious thing is that up until about 2 years ago, daycare centers were allowed in industrial zones.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Councillor Gordon, I saw you had a question.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, Mr. McKell, that's a good point. To me, it doesn't seem like a miscarriage of planning to have that ability in an industrial area, especially when people work in industrial areas. They may want to drop their kids off and pick them up again. So I think that's a great idea. We can look at that. One thing in the presentation piqued my interest. This fence. Who is putting the fence in and who's paying for it?
Mr. Koontz, the owner of the property, will be putting the fence in. We've already had discussions with Mr. Cannell and assured him that the fence will go in all along that common property line. It'll be a chain link fence.
So you're only telling us because do we have to allow a fence, or like why is that important that we know this? It's a no-brainer to me if you're going to have kids.
It was a correspondence that we had received, Councillor Gordon, so it's just part of the correspondence, and they've obviously addressed it. So no matter for council, if the two parties have come to agreement, then sounds wonderful to me. But if you care to comment, Councillor, sorry,
Deputy Mayor Ross.
Yes.
Just to make you aware as well, there's Mr. Kevin Cannell is also present and would like to speak.
I apologize, I missed the last name.
Cannell.
Oh, wonderful. Did that answer your question, Councillor Gordon?
Yes, absolutely. I just didn't know if that was a town responsibility, if that was something we needed to do by approving this.
Wonderful. No, that's great. Mr. Cannell, how are you, sir? Thanks for coming this evening. You had a question or comment, sir?
Just in regards to the fence line, just strictly for safety reasons between the two properties. If it can be ran basically from the road back to, it looks like they're fencing most of it anyway for the child's side of it. But yeah, just strictly for safety.
Wonderful. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Mr. McCall, that's going to be done to Mr. Quinnell's request?
Yes, it will be.
Wonderful. There you go. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the question, Mr. Quinnell. Councillor McGinn?
This is always so very heartwarming when we have people who deputize and then we have these fantastic conversations. And I want to thank you all for communicating with each other, and then for coming present live like this, and for genuinely responding to each other. It seems to make sense to me to have a resource like that in an area where, you know, adults work. So thank you very much to everybody who is attending tonight, and thank you for a very clear, concise presentation.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, any other participants?
Nope, that concludes. That's
Wonderful.
it.
Thank you so much. Anything else to add before we close off, Mr. McKell?
Not a thing. Thank you very much for your time, Council.
Thank you very much for all involved, and thank you for coming out this night. And I'd like to close this public meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Now we have on to our next item on the agenda, was our public meeting with regards to council. Regard to our budget. This is a public meeting procedure bylaw, August 2027, 2018, that this public meeting being held in accordance with section 18 of the town's notice bylaw 2009-20 be received to receive comments from the public regarding the proposed 2021 budget. Madam Clerk, can you please confirm notification of this public meeting was given?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Notice of the meeting was provided on the town's website and through social media, and was also published in the Midland Mirror in the February 4th edition.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. As you're aware, this meeting this evening is being held virtually. As a result, there will be members of the public participating virtually and others by telephone. So those participants by telephone, we ask that you call in now so that you may be placed in sequence. The numbers to call is 705-526-4275, extension 2208. And I believe that number is also being displayed on the Rogers TV. As a reminder, this meeting is to receive comments from the public. Councils may ask questions for clarification, but may not engage in the debate. I would like to now invite those attending the meeting, attending the public meeting, to provide their comments. I will please note that you have 5 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address when you begin. Madam Clerk, who would we have first up?
We have Blaine Dezone.
Mr. Dezone, please state your name and address, and I'll remind you that you have 5 minutes. Thank you for coming, Mr. Dezone.
Okay, thanks very much. Can you hear me? Is that all right?
We sure can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. First of all, I want to thank council for allowing us to speak to this. My name is Blaine Dusome, and I live at 249 Lescott Road in Midland. And I've been a member of or resident in Midland for the last 52 years. And I just wanted to speak to the proposed budget, specifically to the Chief Administrative Officer's proposal. I want to look specifically at the salaries and benefits, where we have what I'm seeing on this document, if I'm reading it correctly, there's a 38% increase totaling $81,156 to the salary increase from 2020. That, as well as the training, travel, meetings, and conferences budget request of, I don't know if, and again, I'm new to this. I don't know if that $10,484 is a request or what, who's requesting that, if that's his request or the council's request. So those are the two items that really kind of jump out at me. And the reason I'm phoning in, and I've never done this before, is that I think that during this year, this pandemic, how everybody's been asked to sacrifice and everybody's been asked to go the extra distance, how, you know, we can look at a raise like that. Maybe I'm missing something. I would like some clarification on that. I think the residents of Midland deserve some clarification on, you know, first the 38% increase in salary and benefits, and then a 322% increase in training, travel, meetings, and conferences. That's really all I had to say. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, everybody's doing their part in town to keep taxes low. I get that. So it's very difficult for a resident myself to look at this and see how, one of the positions within the town of Midland seems to kind of be passing by their part. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. So I just wanted to quickly meet, and that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeZone. Appreciate it. And that's what we're always here for, is to have our community engaged in the process. So I'm not sure if Ms. Yorkin's with us tonight, but if she could provide clarification with regards to this item, or if there's any other. Mr. DeZone's question. Mr. DeZone? Deneau? All yours, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Dusson, for your question. I actually very much appreciate you asking this question, as I do believe there is a significant amount of confusion around this particular item. I can assure you that this has nothing to do with a salary increase for myself. I have in fact declined any increase this year. I've never changed the salary that I was offered when I took this position in April. I've also made sure I do not accept any overtime that would be available to me, and I just have not decided to claim that. So certainly from my base compensation, that has not occurred. What you're seeing reflected in that salary budget is the salary that covers, the planned salary that covers the entire office of the CAO. So there's another individual in place there, and there's also some changes we plan to make with regards to customer service and how we provide the customer service to our residents. So if that change is approved through the budget process, then we'll be anxious to make some of those adjustments. But let me assure you that this has nothing to do with a salary increase for me. And as I said, I've declined any increase that would be available through the normal process.
And
I'd also point out that the overall budget, I think we did a good job in terms of reducing our overall budget by almost 20% relative year over year. So I think that's an important factor to consider. We did look at a number of items. The one item you did mention there as well, training, travel, meetings, and conferences. COVID's obviously going to have an impact on that, but one of the things that has certainly been asked of myself and the senior leadership team is to make sure that Midland is represented across the map when we're dealing with other forms of government. And if you saw the report about OMPF and the amount of funding that we get from the government, I think it's really important that we have representation at some of these meetings. And I think that amount, which I agree, any increase is not a good thing to do if you can avoid it. I think this one would be well worth it if in fact we're able to do it. So I hope that answers your questions.
Now, Mr. Deneau, Sorry, I just want to make sure we get clarification all the way around. Part of the increase on that 34% is partly that you didn't address, and I understand to be correct, is because you started in April, it's an increase from 2020 to 2021. That's sort of inflating that number. Is that correct, sir?
Well, I think the previous CAO who was in here was on contract, so I'm not sure if there was some time differential there when you compare the two.
I just want to make sure we get all the facts. That's great. Mr. Zone, did I hear you had a follow-up, sir?
Yeah, sorry. No, when I was in the on the website, I went through the list, and it was indicating how many employees in each division. And in the CAO division, there was only one employee listed. So the comment was made that there's possibly other people going to be.
There's an executive assistant that helps out the CAO, and I'm not sure if that position was sort of adjusted and moved into a different category, but maybe Mr. Deneau could answer.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, there's certainly another person who reports into that office. Those costs were shared across the organization, and again, what you're seeing in a lot of these budgets is a bit of a reset to make sure that we're putting the costs where we think they should be reflected. So those costs are now all within the CAO office. And as I mentioned, should the budget be approved, there are some adjustments we'd be making for existing staff to take on some customer service responsibility.
Does that satisfy your answer, or sorry, your question, Mr. Dizon?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I just think the optics of it are not good at all.
Yeah,
And,
I think,
you know, during dealing with it, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm a layman when it comes to this.
sure.
But when you see those sorts of increases during with the dealing with the pandemic, and it's just really hard to look at that and just kind of, you know, pass it off. And that's what my
Point taken,
concern
and
was.
we greatly appreciate you bringing it up, and hopefully we got the clarification to the public. So greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, Mr. Dizon.
May I make one final clarification? I want to
Yes,
be very
please.
clear on this. The overall budget is decreasing by 20% year over year. Decreasing by 20% year over year. There is no salary change in the people that are existing in that function. I have not accepted any increase from the salary that was given to me. So I want to be very clear and transparent on that. Any change that would be considered is to offer enhanced customer service with existing staff that we have.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Dizon. And thank you very much, Mr. Dizon, for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, Madam Clerk.
Yes, we have Mr. Daniel Polarin.
Hi,
Okay.
thanks for, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can, Mr. Polarin. If you could state your address, that'd be wonderful, and and bring forward your question.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually, I'm Robbins Point, so I'm in Victoria Harbor actually, but I'm here to speak about the North Simcoe Capitals Girls Hockey Association.
Yes, sir.
So obviously it encompasses not just only Midland, but the other municipalities, because we are North Simcoe. So, and we are playing out of the Midland area. So I just want to, I'm going to try and be brief here, but I just want to kind of take you back to what happened in the summer in regards to some of the fees that were kind of passed on to the local associations. And I know this is kind of for budgetary reasons. So, you know, shortly after, I guess, the first wave of the pandemic, the town of Midland and the North Simcoe Rec Center decided to open up the arena. And from what we understand, they entered into an agreement with the, I guess, the local or the regional organization, the North Central Predators, which is a AAA boys organization, to increase fees. So those fees were passed on to ourselves as well as Midland Minor Hockey. We were never given a written agreement about this, but simply told that these fees would be passed on to us. So we did not have a chance to plan for a large increase in our operating costs. We were told this increase was because of cleaning costs. And it's been our understanding that from watching the news that the money has been given to municipalities for the government to cover the cost of cleaning and COVID in general. So from what we've witnessed in the arena, there are no extra staff that have been working, you know, because of COVID and cleaning and things like that. So we feel that the rate was simply passed on to the associations. And from what we understand, there was never a vote by council to increase the rate. So we don't think there's any reason why the town can justify an added expense of $32.89 an hour. Our minor hockey rate has always been set at $146.84. But, you know, since the pandemic, the rate was increased to $179.73 before taxes. We've checked around with other local minor hockey associations and have not found any municipalities that have increased their fees during these unprecedented times. In fact, we found that Springwater has lowered their rates the entire time they were open, and Aurelia currently, since we're in the red zone, is decreasing their rentals by 50%. And we also have to realize that we're at, you know, if the rink was to open, which we're hopeful it is, we're only allowed 10 skaters on the ice. And so the rate would be still, you know, as we would have had 25 skaters on the ice. So you know, the cost to us does not make sense. I do have minor hockey rates from across the area, and I think that council has done a good job in keeping us fairly competitive with the other municipalities. But when we raise the rate $39, our rate is comparable with Barrie's rate. And I just think we have to realize that We are in Midland, and there is a substantial difference between ourselves and some of the other municipalities. Even a place like Collingwood, who I would consider very comparable, is only charging a minor hockey rate of $107 an hour. So that's a significant difference right there. So just in closing, I know there's a lot of things for you guys to think about, but I want us to realize that, we're very happy, and I think people in general are happy with how the rec center has handled everything during the pandemic. And we're thankful for all of the countless individuals that have, put effort in during these difficult times. But since we've moved into the red zone, we're really looking forward to heading back on the ice as soon as possible. But to be honest, we will not be able to sustain the increased costs over time. So we have to remember that we are a small community and cannot be comparing ourselves to our larger municipalities. Hockey is already considered a sport for the privileged, and raising rates will only exacerbate this reality. The community center, we all know that this is the heart of a community, a welcoming and inclusive space that brings people together. And I am not alone in feeling that we need to keep it that way. So we know that you believe this too, and we hope you'll reconsider the cost. And we hope you'll reconsider, obviously, opening the arena. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I know there's a lot of things you guys have to talk about. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents, and hopefully we can come to some kind of conclusion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Deneau?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pellerin, for the question, and through you, Deputy Mayor, to council, and certainly the members of the public. I certainly appreciate the circumstance that everyone feels in terms of the services that are being offered. I am a hockey parent, 3 kids that have gone through all levels of hockey. I've been to, I think, almost every arena in this province. I'm a proud coach who's been able to secure 5 OMHA championships with some folks. So I can certainly appreciate, what hockey does for kids and communities. I'm also a big basketball fan, so I enjoy the gym aspects of things as well. So those services, I absolutely agree, are extremely vital and important. And and it's not just my passion for this. I know everyone feels that way in Midland, and you can see it in that facility. When I said I've been to every rink in this province, I'd say Midland is one of those treasures of a rink. I mean, it's a beautiful facility. It does come at a cost, though. And to be quite frank, I think everyone knows that facility, not just the rink, but the gym and the other facilities, lose over $1 million a year in cost. And that has to come from the taxpayer, unfortunately. The taxpayers of Midland pay for that. I know it's a North Simcoe recreational facility, but it is paid for by the Midland residents through their taxes. It is covered through that. So the fees do not reflect the cost of those services that we provide. When the pandemic hit, because we wanted to offer services as quickly as possible to our residents, we were one of the first municipalities that looked at opening the hockey rinks. The only way we thought we could do that is if we had some help from the community to either help us with protocols or help us cover some of the cost. So to have 2 minimum wage people help us clean something that's very touch interactive. When you're talking about hockey, lots of spaces are touched. There's a lot of touch points to clean. We thought that was a reasonable request to make of hockey for a temporary position. We had no idea where the pandemic was going. And from my understanding, that was agreed to. And that's how we were able to open. We could have made the decision, like other municipalities, to close the facility and save costs and lay off people. We did not do that. We wanted to open it because of exactly what people are saying. This is important services for our communities, and that's what we were committed to doing. And we did that throughout the pandemic. Do we need to revisit the costs? In the budget, you'll see, I think, a more modest increase that I think we're proposing in a number of areas, including some of the ice rinks, to help make sure we're presenting that balanced approach of managing costs. Some of them are inflation related. They haven't seen cost increases for some time, and we have to make that assessment. That is our responsibility to do that as staff, and certainly for council to consider it as something they want to do. There's no question the facility is losing money. Can we make up some of that difference so that the taxpayers across the board are not bearing all of that responsibility? I think it is something that's responsible and we need to consider. but I can absolutely tell you that the decision to open this facility was absolutely predicated on getting it open as quickly as possible and as safely as possible for everyone to use it. And we're going to make that same assessment when we go into this red zone that we talked about, because again, we've kept our ice in, knowing that hopefully we can reopen soon. And I'm hoping that our people are in touch with you to find out what the interest is, because we want to make certainly that assessment again and open as quickly as possible. Still pretty restrictive in terms of the number of people that we can offer, but I think we all appreciate how important it is to the community, and we want to make sure we're doing that with all the facts. I hope that helps. I know there's been a lot of passion around what's happening, but I can tell you that, as you mentioned, everyone at that facility is really committed to operating as effectively as possible. And, I want to thank all of them for what they're doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deneau.
Can I just respond to that?
Follow up, sir? Yes, sir.
So thank you for all those points. I think those are very valid, and I appreciate the I guess the honesty on your end. I think as a community, people need the upfront and honest assessment of where the rink is going, and like you said, it is the heart of the community, and you are a hockey parent yourself, so I think you do appreciate that. I think, hopefully the council can kind of take a look at where those prices are going. And I do realize that there's a lot of budget deliberations, and I do realize facilities in general lose money. So that is something obviously you have to balance all the time. But I think I would assume there are a number of ways that you can put money back into the facility, not just only maybe concentrating on hockey. And I think probably you've looked at that, but I want you to be cautious, because I know that, living as a resident in the area, there are people moving to this town, and they are conscious of what takes place within a community, and they're aware of how they're treated, I guess. So that's all I really have to say. I hope to be back on the ice very soon. I hope council can see the importance behind the facility, and we can move forward and in a good way, because there are a lot of kids. Yes, maybe they're privileged, but there are kids that do get a helping hand in terms of registrations, not only in hockey, basketball. I completely agree. I don't care what the sport is, and we need to be able to provide those opportunities with a decent registration fee. Okay. So thank you
very much, sir. I see Councillor Main had a comment. Councillor Main?
Oh, thank you so much for this background. I actually spoke with Mr. Dezome today, and I haven't been at St. Teresa's for almost 25 years, but he's still somehow giving me homework. But I was looking up ice allocation and fees, and we were talking, as we're getting lots of emails from concerned residents. So I guess we do actually have multiple fees. So Mr. Pellerin, obviously there's some concern over the minor people being charged the adult rate. What we're proposing, or what's in the fee structure, is a 5% increase for the minor, the lower tier rate. And so instead of 146, it would be 154. So,
yeah, and I think that's well within reason. The real concern I have is if the rate increase continues at the rate it is, it's just unsustainable for people. I agree with 5%. I mean, you do have to raise rates, things, costs change. That's fair. A 5% increase is completely fair, but not the increase that we're seeing consistently. I mean, if you just look at, let's just say, we're able to open the rink in the next week at $206. I mean, that's $20 a kid an hour. When you have families with multiple kids, that's a significant amount of money per kid at, with only allowing 10 people on the ice. So I just want, council to consider that's a significant cost. And we talk about people losing their jobs and, living paycheck to paycheck. This might be the only activity they're able to do. Not only that, but whatever sport you're participating in. So
thank you very much, sir. And I know we have a lot more waiting, so I appreciate the comment. And council, I can promise you that there's not anybody that doesn't feel, that recreation for our youth is not important. It's just, we're going to have a bigger conversation at the budget, but I greatly appreciate you coming, and hopefully we get those kids back on the ice sooner than later.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate your time, and have a great night, everybody.
Thank you very much, sir. Madam Clerk, next up.
Miss Colleen Baker.
Miss Baker. Ms. Baker, if you could state, you're on mute. Hi, Ms. Baker, how are you? If you could
I'm
state
good, how are
your address, that'd be wonderful.
I'm at 154 South Winds Crescent.
Wonderful.
I
got a
just want to
question?
thank you all for allowing me to speak. I'm also speaking on behalf of minor hockey associations in our area. I am the president of Midland Minor Hockey. I want to thank Dan for speaking. We agree with everything he said to you guys previously. I've sent you all emails asking you to go back to the youth fee. We've been hit really hard paying the adult fee this season with the pandemic, losing registrations because of the pandemic, and we've had to keep our registrations high. We were never given any agreement per se saying this is the new thing for this. It was, you are paying this. We were told it was not an agreement. So we were not able to adjust fees this season to accommodate kids playing and having to pay those high fees. I think we also need to, like, mental health and well-being is a huge part of our community, and sports, especially hockey, and it brings together friendship, a sense of belonging and family, which is much needed during this time and every other time for kids. They need that. So the fees this year that we've been paying, I just want to put this in perspective. If fees continue to go up each year, we may have to charge almost $1,000 for local league hockey per player. That's how much, and that's going to take away hockey from low income and middle income families. And I don't know about you, but I would not be able to afford my one child to play at $1,000 for local league hockey. That does not include rep hockey. That's even more money. And that does not include equipment every year. That does not include tournaments, travel. That doesn't include anything. We are going to lose registrations, and we're going to lose that sense of belonging for the children in our community if we continue to see all these ice prices keep rising. Yes, 5%, but what's going to happen next year and the year after and the year after? We as an association need a guarantee that this is not going to keep going up every year. If this continues to keep going up, we're not going to have Midland Minor Hockey. You're going to lose out on all the ice time that we rent for our children to play. That's over 300 players in our association alone. It is so hard this year to see all of this happening in a pandemic when people are struggling. It's really heartbreaking that this has happened. We wanted to get those kids on the ice because it's been hard for them. They haven't been able to see friends, haven't been able to see family. That was something they looked forward to. And I can tell you right now, our association will not be going on the ice as long as we are in the red zone. We cannot afford it. Our families cannot afford to be on the ice. So I'm really asking on behalf of Midland Minor Hockey and all the other hockey associations that use your facilities to restore the hourly rate for youth and to commit to us that we are not going to see hikes every single year, that we can continue to run this program for our children's mental and physical health. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned other associations. Can you share us what the status in Penetang would be?
They had to close.
So they have no ice.
They have no ice right now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Deneau, you care to comment, or we'll take a comment, her concerns to our budget meeting on Monday?
No, thank you. Thank you again. No, Ms. Baker has shared certainly the correspondence with me, and I mean, I think you could probably understand my personal perspective on hockey and the importance. And one of our family hockey members was our daughter as well, so it spans both female and male hockey, and she was the high scorer. So I appreciate how important it is for every member to have participation in this. My responsibility as CAO, though, is to make sure that those costs are understood. not only for this facility, for the ice pads, but for all those facilities and for the other services that, we want to make sure that other residents in our town need. We've talked about affordable housing and how we need to support that, how we need to support mobility and accessible transit, and how we want to improve access to our trails and roads. All of that certainly comes into consideration, and that's where obviously the difficult decisions are made. Every member of this council I know will say we support physical activity and the mental health and well-being of parents and children. So it is tough, and that's why I think we're trying to really put a balanced perspective now that we have a better idea of how to manage the pandemic with a 5% increase on some of those ice rates. Can we continue to do that and hold those rates? I hope so. But it will depend on those other things that we talked about. How much assistance can we get from the government? Can we get more assistance? Can we create more revenue opportunities for this town so that we can contribute to those services that we all need? That's part of the reason why, we're making some of the adjustments in the town and some of the requests we're making. We need to make ourselves a little more prosperous so we can cover some of the services people need. So I hear you loud and clear. I understand exactly why you feel you need that need. I hope people appreciate that, our response early in the pandemic was purely because we wanted to offer those services and we had no reasonable way to cover those costs. There was no funding predicted, and we needed to make some decisions quickly to serve you. And that's what was done. So hopefully this budget will give you a bit of confidence and predictability for this year. And certainly that's what we'll try to do in other years as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker, for coming this evening. Any follow-up question?
I just want to say thank you for listening. And I just don't want to see our community, our kids suffer because of a pandemic. And I don't want to see their mental health, their physical health go down the tubes because we're having to pay way too much money. So thank you again for listening, and I hope you really consider it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker. Appreciate you coming this evening. It's never easy to express your concerns, but we greatly appreciate your input. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next up.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, we have Mr. Robert Garraway.
Mr. Garraway, how are you this evening? Please state your address and your question, please, sir. Is Mr. Garraway there?
Mr. Garraway, did you want to unmute, please?
I don't even, oh, there he is. Mr. Garraway?
Oh. He's still muted.
Am I not here?
Mr. Garraway, you're unmuted. How are you this evening, sir?
Good. I'm 794 Bay Street.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thanks for coming this evening. Your question, sir?
Just wondering why the rates for the water and the sewer is going up 90% this year, or 9%.
It's Mr. Campbell, you care to comment if you don't mind? I know there's quite a bit of infrastructure responsibilities, but I'll allow Mr. Campbell to add some input.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Through to you to Mr. Garraway. The rates are going up by 4% and 5%, not 9%, just for clarification. And those costs are around our asset renewal costs. When you look at the costs of the assets, the wear down of the system, the town needs to make sure they put enough money in the bank to replace those assets. Our wastewater plant, for example, is 25 years old since it was last rebuilt. That's getting towards the end of its life, and we'll be needing about $20 million over the next few years to rebuild that. The only way to get that money is to gradually increase the fees year over year. So for the last number of years, we've been going at 4 and 5% increases each year. And I've told council and projected we'll be doing 4 and 5% increases for a number of years going forward. If we are going to have enough money in our reserves to pay for the replacement of that wastewater plant. And the same on the water system. One of our water towers is over 110 years old. It's at end of life. To replace that water tower will be in $1 million to replace that water tower and some of the infrastructure. So we have huge costs, and if you want to get more detail, the water master plan was approved by council in December. The wastewater master plan is coming to council in March. And by reading both those documents, and we've had public meetings and public input over the last 2 years on this subject, it's looking at what are those needs going forward, looking at where the growth in the town is, how are we going to have to grow? Those increases are not day-to-day operating cost increases. Yes, we've had increases for our fuels, our chemicals that are inflationary in nature. The larger increases are purely to put money in the bank to pay for these capital replacements.
Mr. Garraway, you had a follow-up?
No.
Any other questions?
You seem to answer it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for calling in and greatly appreciate your input. Thank you. Mr. Councillor Main, you had a comment with regards to this item?
It is worth noting.
Very much, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you so much. It is worth noting that for many users in town, that we only calculate your water rate and we calculate your sewer rate based off 1.3 times the amount of water you use. So many people in town will have water and sewer, and your sewer rates are going to be calculated on how much water you use. So be mindful if you're watering your lawn because you're paying sewer rates on that, if you are connected to the sewers.
Mayor Strathern, I saw you had your card up. You had a comment, sir?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to let the last caller know that the tax levy cannot be used to pay for the water rates, so for water and sewer usage. So the province has mandated that all costs associated with water supply and sewerage has to be captured from the users themselves and through the rates. It's a huge shift in terms of how business used to be done and will be done. And so in order to catch up, and also to Mr. Campbell's comment, a lot of this infrastructure that's been put in back in the 60s and 70s, it's coming to its useful end. And we do need to do that. But it's not something that we just decided we would do. It's the province has turned around and said, you will capture all costs in your rate structure. And only in your rate structure. So I just thought it would be useful to point that out to Mr. Garraway.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And thank you very much, Mr. Garraway.
You.
Madam Clerk, next on the agenda.
There is supposed to be 2 additional people. I'm not quite sure whether they're in attendance. Dylan Seka or Sika.
Okay. Sorry.
And Amanda Bartusiak. However, I did not see them as participants. So
did we have any call-ins? Anyone waiting online?
Not at this moment. I did have an individual call during the public meeting for 174 for the planning matter, and I had asked, suggested that he call back.
They call back. Well, let's hope that. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's hope that we answered all their questions already, but I'll make another call that if anyone would like to be involved with the public meeting this evening, we would suggest that you call in at 705-526-4275, extension 2208, and we'd love to hear from our public. Should we give it a minute, Madam Clerk, or?
Yes, I'm thinking if we just we've got someone calling in, just a moment.
Wonderful. And while we're waiting, I see Councilor Chesky had a sign up. Councilor Chesky, you had a question, sir?
I think very much just in terms of process, We advertised the public input meeting for the budget to be at 7 o'clock, and it's 2 hours later. So I just, for future reference, if we could, advertise it for 7 p.m. and have the meeting at 7 p.m., we'd probably get a better turnout. And this is late for us. We have a lot of residents in our town that this is past bedtime. So just for the future, in my opinion.
Point taken. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, you said we had another person on the line?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Ross, we have Yvonne Teets on the line, and I will just put her on speaker just one moment.
Wonderful. Ms. Teef, if you could state your address, that'd be great.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, hello. How are you?
Oh, good, thanks. Thank
You could state your address for the record. It'd be wonderful.
Oh, sorry. Yvonne Teets, 229 Bay Street, Midland.
Wonderful. You had a question?
Yes, thank you for taking my call tonight. I have a question regarding the clarification of the funding on the Big Dig project for the downtown. Originally, 10.5 million came from the PUC reserve, which was supposed to be a temporary funding, I guess. And then new funding in the amount of 14.5 was taken, and there was supposed to be, I guess, new funding and new loan. But can we find out where that 10.5 went to, and if it was actually placed back into the PUC reserve?
We'll get that answer for you right now. I'm not sure who would answer. Would that be Mr. Jeremy or Mr. Campbell? Or I see Mr. Jeremy's unmuted. So Mr. Jeremy, sir, if you could explain the funding model, please.
Certainly. So the $10.5 million from the community-wide initiatives reserve was tagged as part of a staff report as potential for short-term bridge financing that we were going to do internally. During the process of completing the project, we did draw somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it was $2 million from that reserve. When we ultimately issued the $12 million debenture in November of 2020, those funds were repaid in full to the community-wide initiatives reserve. So all funds have been returned to our internal sources.
Does that answer your question? Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do.
Yes, please.
Any documentation to show that on the actual budget? Like, would that be showing anywhere on this particular budget at all, or?
Mr. Jeremy, I guess the question was, I'm having a hard time hearing it, unfortunately, but I believe it was would that show on the budget that the money was returned that we borrowed?
That's not something that you would see through the budget, no. That's an internal movement of funds that it's not, it's not something that you would see through the budget per se.
Because to clarify, it really wasn't a cost. It was just sort of shuffling some money from one account to another. So it would never amount to a line item. Is that correct, sir?
Correct. Yes. So if we were looking at how it has ultimately panned out, it's ultimately panned out in the external debt financing that occurred back in November. So I guess if we were looking to see where would you see the implications of how the project was financed, you're seeing it through the repayment of that debt, the debt servicing costs that are incurred each year. And just going by memory here, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 and change that we are paying each year to pay off that external debt, and that $600 and some odd thousand is funded from a number of different sources. There's a tax component, there's a water and wastewater component, there's a development charges component. So it's broken up into a bunch of smaller chunks that are ultimately making the payments on that debt. So that's where you would see it in the budget.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Follow up. Any other questions, Ms. Teep?
Yeah, it's just very deceiving when we're told certain things, but then like the money's taken out of things, but that things are not put back. So if there's any transparency that can happen in the future, that's a huge assuming that, it should be transferred, but nothing ever comes about. Just transparency would be nice to have. And I do have one more question.
Please.
Regarding the $1.5 million reduction on Highway 93, whereby the county of Simcoe was looking for funding after the fact, but the construction was done. Is that being taken into account in this budget, and where would I find that?
Mr. Campbell, with regards to the, if I understand correctly, it's very hard to hear, but if I understand correctly, it was the $1.4 million with regards to the county trail on Highway 93.
Yeah, that county project, the town's portion is $1.8 million that the county has informally request. We're waiting for a formal request from the county before that would be considered by council.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Do you have a follow-up, Ms. T?
Hello?
Hello, yeah.
Sorry, is that going to be in this budget? Because that's an awful lot of money for 2021. That's not really being considered as of yet, but it will be somewhat financed or not?
Mr. Campbell?
We're waiting to see if that's what the county actually does ask us for. We have no formal requests at this date.
Wonderful. So at this point, we haven't been asked. Mayor Strathern?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just for the caller's sense of state of mind about what's going on with the funds from MPUC. The MPUC grant has a committee comprised of two externals and some two people from council, and they are very diligent in terms of drawing up understandings between the fund and the municipality, and they are very diligent in terms of making sure that they understand when the funds are coming back, what the rate is being paid for the funds, and so on, and is being satisfied. And it's also something that typically would go before our auditors at end of year. And I think I can reassure the caller that these things, while they may not show up as a budgetary item or a budgetary transfer, they do show up within the accounts, and they are looked at by independent eyes to make sure that nothing falls between the cracks.
Thank you, Worship. Any other questions?
Thank you. No.
Thank you so much for calling in this evening. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Madam Clerk, do we have any other callers or anyone with a question for our council this evening?
I did have a couple callers trying to call in. So if you just want to remind them of the number.
Yeah, we'll be happy to wait. No problem.
Okay, I do have someone, just a moment.
Sure.
So Deputy Mayor Ross, I do have Howie Major on the line, but just before I add him, I just wanted to remind, or not remind, but just to make everyone aware, and this is something that the Deputy Mayor would be advising of once the meeting concluded, that all of these comments that are being received, staff are compiling all of the comments and questions that are being raised this evening, as well as those submitted via email as part of the budget process, and we'll be making them available on the town's website, and responses will be provided to these questions. So as much as staff are responding this evening, it's that is generally the process that is being undertaken this year. So just
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Just ahead, and I will.
Wonderful. We have Mr. Majors.
Go ahead, Mr. Majors.
Mr. Majors, if you could state your address, please, sir. How are you this evening?
Howie Majors, Scott Street. Good.
Wonderful.
Two quick questions. One is,
sure.
why is the town thinking of buying a machine to get rid of stumps and an asphalt roller when we got taxpayers in town that own businesses that can do those jobs? And why not give it to them?
And your second question?
My second question is, how come when there's only 3 people laid off in the town, the hydrants aren't cleaned out around town, and there was a couple of weeks with no snow, and they never lowered down the banks at the corners. So by the time you pull out to see if anything's coming, you're damn near hit. Like they should have been high winging the banks down around town just to make it safer for us to drive. And hydrants, I've been around town and there's hardly any hydrants cleaned out. So I don't know if that messes up your house insurance or not, but the hydrants not being cleaned out.
Thank you very much. We'll turn it over to Mr. Campbell with regards to the asphalt and stump remover. Mr. Campbell, thank you so much, sir.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That equipment, it's equipment that we've had in the past, and it needs to be replaced. Contracting out, we contract out larger jobs, but sometimes it's just more efficient if we have our own equipment to go and do some work. So it's that trade-off between contracting out services and doing it ourselves. And some of these piece of equipment, having them handy makes our lives more efficient. If council wishes us to contract out more work as we get through this budget process to change our cost allocation structure, we can certainly look at that.
Wonderful, thank you. And with regards to our hydrometers, sorry, our water meters and being shoveled out, etc. I know we've received a lot of snow in the last few weeks, but
they've been going on all winter with the hydrants. They haven't been cleaned out all winter, so it's not just this last 2 weeks.
No, I understand, but I'd ask Mr. Campbell if he could provide with some clarification with regards to those.
I'll have to talk to staff to see why it hasn't been done.
Wonderful. Mr. Majors, we hear your concerns, and I have full confidence they'll be addressed. I greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments before you leave, sir? Do we lose him, Madam Clerk? Thank you very much, Mr. Major, for calling in.
Oh, we must have lost.
Madam Clerk, any other questions or comments?
There was another individual that was attempting to.
All right, we'll give them a minute. I'll remind anybody if they have a question or comment with regards to the 2021 municipal budget to call 705-526-4275, extension 2208. And I will remind that exactly what the clerk just reminded us, that please note that staff are compiling all of the comments and questions raised this evening, as well as those submitted by email as part of the budget process, and will be making them available on the town's website along with the responses. So that is wonderful news. So not only if you missed a question or had a comment, and it will be on our website for a full review of the public. So that's great news. So we'll give them another minute. It's 9:24. We'll give them 2 more minutes to see if anyone else has interest in calling. We'd love to hear from you. I guess we have no more calls. So being that there is no further comments, we would like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation.
Mayor, if you could bear with me just one moment, I think somebody left a message, so I'm just going to act.
Wonderful, no problem. Be happy to. Any other questions or comments from our council at this point, or we'll just leave it to see if the Madam Clerk comes back? Wonderful.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, I have Kirk Binns, 297 Estate Court.
Wonderful. Mr. Bin, how are you, sir?
Go ahead, Mr. Bin.
Good evening, everybody.
Wonderful. Thanks for calling in this evening. You had a question?
Yes, I certainly do. My question revolves around the budget, some of the numbers in it, and a proposed tax hike of 4.65%. So in the budget, I see an additional 4 headcount for $468,000, as well as 9 capital projects over $250K spend. So my question revolves around how we can justify such a budget in increasing a tax rate of 4.65% during a pandemic, per previous callers mentioning. You know, on a normal year, I think that's a little bit absurd. The county is at a 0% tax rate increase, and the town is now proposing 4.65%, and we're talking about a 4-person incremental headcount of $468,000, 9 capital project spends over $250K. You know, it just seems a little out of touch to me. So, I'm curious as to how anybody could justify approving a budget with an increase, with a tax increase to cover such things.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Deneau. Now, I will comment that none of those positions have been approved. It's a proposed, so this is a proposed budget, and we are still working on the process, but I appreciate the question. Mr. Deneau?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Bin, and through you, Deputy Mayor, to the members of council and public, and certainly do appreciate that perspective on what the budget ask is, and that's not only for the town, that's also for our agency boards and commissions. There's some council asks, and of course, the additional staff that you mentioned. What will eventually be approved will certainly be something that council will spend some time deliberating next week, and this process with the feedback from the public is an important aspect of that. What we've tried to make sure is reflected, and I think I could probably speak on behalf of the ABC's agency boards and commissions who also presented, was there are certain avenues that other municipalities may have to provide relief to their municipalities. Some of them can dig into reserves to provide relief on some of those tax levy impacts. We don't have much flexibility from that perspective. What we need to do, and it's certainly part of the strategic initiative here at Midland, is to create a community where we can actually grow jobs, grow prosperity, and create an environment where hopefully we can provide more tax relief to our residents. And that includes obviously working directly with the government to get funding on projects, or maybe direct funding that some of our neighbors may have received. Can you avoid doing that this year and push it off for another year? You can do that. Will it potentially cause problems down the road? I think that's something that has to be considered. Are you just moving that problem to another year? I think that's one of the potential consequences of doing that. So you may pause it for a year, but you could fall behind. Certainly our recommendation is, that some of these asks are important to help us continue to recover. I think we've done a very good job in Midland positioning ourselves to come out of the COVID, hitting the ground running, if you like, in terms of serving our businesses and residents. And I would certainly like to see us do that. It's about trying to recover so you can offer that relief. But again, we will go with the direction of council and take that through the budget process next week.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deneau. Did you have a follow-up, sir?
Yeah, with all due respect, the private sector is dying. Businesses are, people are losing jobs, businesses are closing, and we're talking about a 4-person incremental headcount of $468,000. And then we're talking about deferring. We're in a pandemic, and you guys are talking about raising taxes 4.65% for these things. So it means less services. If you guys got to come up with another way to balance the budget without increasing taxes, that would be recommended on my end. But that's up to you guys to figure out. But I don't I don't understand how anybody can justify increasing taxes during this time and adding headcount or incremental headcount of 468 grand when people are losing their jobs.
Point is taken, and we appreciate it. And we have some big discussions to start with all of council on Monday morning. So I greatly appreciate it. I know that all council heard you, and we'll definitely have that conversation.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much, sir, for calling in. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
You as well. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, any other questions or comments?
Again, yes, I did have an individual attempting to call in. I'm just going to, I did get their number, so I'm going to try to reach them. Oh,
sure.
And there, that is them. Just a moment.
Did we have another?
I have Mr. Dickinson from 353 Gloucester on the line.
Oh, wonderful. Mr. Dickinson, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you for having this public meeting. I just wanted to express my support to Mr. Garneau and the efforts of staff. I know that council's got a hard task ahead of them, deciding what stays and what goes. But I know that Mr. Garneau and the staff have really been diligent in, I think, and made a good case for what they've asked for. So I just want to say that let's not try and get 0% when that would be worse than, in the long run, than a slight increase. So I know that some people feel that in a pandemic we can't increase at all. I'm not sure Midland's in a state where we can make that choice. So I know we want to get close to that if we can, but I just wanted to say that I support direction of staff so far.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. They're greatly appreciated.
Thank you. And I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Dixon? Mr. Main, sorry, Councilor Main.
Thank you. I know, thank you again, Mr. Dickinson, for all your volunteering with some of the committees. I just had a question. I know you're a big advocate for accessibility and pedestrian initiatives. Was there any specific thing that you saw in the budget that stood out to you that you supported, or are you just basically making a general comment that you support generally the budget? Thank you.
At the moment, it's just a general comment. I still have to work through quite a bit of it. It's a big document, and I'm not on council, so I appreciate all you guys can have to do in kind of assessing the challenge of making the final decision.
Well, we greatly appreciate your support. Thank you very much, sir. And we appreciate you calling in this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, any other calls this evening?
No, that's it, Deputy Mayor.
Wonderful.
So I just wanted to say, though, I do think that there were a couple people that were trying to call that had already spoken. So just for those individuals, if that have already had an opportunity to speak, if you still have some questions, please submit those questions to budget@midland.ca, and they will be added along with all of the other comments. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And I want to thank everybody. It's not easy in this pandemic going virtual with regards to a public meeting. I think it went very well. But please, if there's anybody that had a question that weren't able to get in, please forward your question to budget@midland.ca, and we'll be sure to get it up on our website and the answer for you. So we greatly appreciate everybody, and being that there's, yes.
I did have another individual calling.
Wonderful.
And unfortunately, I was listening. So
okay,
just give it a minute.
We'll allow one more call, and then we'll call this meeting closed. And we'll, if we have some more comments with regards to questions, we'll get them on our website, and they can forward by email.
Yeah, it was Mr. Meredith. So if he could just
sure,
he's listening. If he could just call back.
We'll give him a minute. Any luck with regard to calling back, Madam Clerk?
No, nothing.
All right. Well, we'll have to close this meeting.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, that is him now, and I apologize. I did miss him because I was providing.
No problem. Wonderful.
I'll grab him now.
Great.
Hello, Karen speaking. Go ahead, Mr. Meredith, provide your name and your address.
Mr. Meredith, I need your name and address, sir, for the record.
906 Hugo Avenue.
Wonderful. Mr. Meredith, how are you this evening?
906 Hugo Avenue.
Wonderful. What's your question, sir?
Go ahead with your question.
Good. How are you? Good evening, everybody, and thanks for taking my question. I'm just going back to the budget regarding our CFO.
Hello? We lose him?
Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead, sir. We have a hard time hearing you.
Hello? Oh, I think we lost him.
All right. Should we give him a minute to call back, or?
No, let's just, I guess, give him a second. Yeah.
Sure.
Otherwise, I think we're done.
Madam Clerk, if it's any consolation, I've been getting some text messages from people that have been trying to call in and the line's busy or not working. I don't know if the system got overloaded, but anyway, just it's not you. Like they're actually genuinely trying to call in and get dropped.
Fair enough. No, what it is that that's why the deputy mayor had indicated that people call it in advance while the meeting, the video, or the those participating via the Zoom link when they were presenting, because I could put them in the queue. Otherwise, once the phone is ringing, I can't. Unfortunately, I can't grab them.
And hopefully we can at least get their questions with regards to an email to budget@midland.ca, and we'll be sure to get that answer. We'll give Mr. Meredith 30 more seconds, and we'll have to.
Yeah, I don't think there are any more calls coming through.
No problem. We'll be sure to get, if Mr. Meredith has a question, he can be happy to email us, and we'll be sure to get him an answer. So being that there's no other comments, we would like to thank everyone for the attendance and participation. Once again, please note that staff are compiling all comments and questions raised this evening, as well as those submitted by email. As part of the budget process, we'll be making them available on the town's website along with response. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I know we have a bit more to go. I'm going to call a 5-minute bio break. It's 9:40 at this.
Deputy, I apologize. Yes. Mr. Meredith is back on the line.
All right, we'll have one more crack at her. And Mr. Meredith, you had a question, sir?
Go ahead, Mr. Meredith.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you, sir? Sorry, we lost you there a second ago. You had a question?
Yes, I do.
Yes, please.
Good evening, Council and Deputy and Your Worship. I'm just going to follow up back on the first question of the evening regarding our Chief Officer and his wage.
Yes, sir.
In regards to the increase. And I want like a clarification on the, I guess it would be this customer service person that we were going to be hiring.
No, well, I'll ask if you'd like Mr. Deneau to clarify one more time, but Mr. Deneau, if you care to.
I'm having trouble with hearing.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Hopefully you can hear me, Mr. Meredith.
Yeah, I'm having some trouble here, but go ahead.
Yeah, the budget is to cover staff again, including myself within the CAO office. And as part of our recommendation that I did make at earlier in the year, there was going to be a renewed focus on customer service within the organization. So that budget is reflecting some increased responsibility with existing staff, not new staff, existing staff to look after some customer service responsibilities we're considering.
So to clarify that, some of that increase is to do just with a bit of shifting at Town Hall from one department to another. Is that correct, sir? Mr. Deneau?
Yeah, increased responsibility.
Yeah, correct. Wonderful. Does that satisfy your question, Mr. Meredith?
It just went from earlier where it was sound like we were hiring someone for that position to now it's changed to putting someone in that position.
No, there was no yeah, we were clarified that we apologize for the miscommunication, but no new hire, just different responsibilities from some of the people at Town Hall. I hope that clarifies for you, sir.
So yeah, so that does, but so what I'm looking at 2020 when the salary was 214. I think that's what it is. I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize.
That's I believe that to be correct. Yes, sir.
So that's a freeze is what we're discussing here.
That's correct. No increase with regards to the CEO. He's chose not to take a pay increase, as he mentioned earlier this evening. Mr. Meredith, any other questions, sir?
That's fine for tonight. I appreciate your time. I just want some clarification on that because I think due to the taxes, I hope that we work hard to, if it's any time in this time of pandemic and everything that's going on, that we can strive for maybe a 0% tax year. I know you've tried for years, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and hopefully this is the year that we can achieve that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the comments, Mr. Meredith. And have a wonderful evening, and thank you for calling in this evening.
Take care, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, now I'll call this meeting closed. If there's no further comment, we'd like to thank everyone once again for attending and participating. I'll ask for a 5-minute bio break. It is 9:45 right now. We'll be back at 9:50. Give everyone 5 minutes, and we'll see you back here in a minute. Thank you. Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk, are you ready? Madam Clerk?
If she doesn't get back in 15 minutes, we can put a motion to recess. Is that how it works?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? We got 3 great days next week too together.
I have to work 4 hours before we even start the budget meetings.
Lucky you.
Blue collar cool.
Yeah. All right, Madam Clerk, are we ready to presume?
We are good to go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next up on the agenda is items that were pulled. We had one item this evening, and that was item number, that report CSR-2021-8, Midland Airport 2019 Strategic Development Plan Next Step, dated February 17, 2021, be received, and that council endorsed the recommended next step strategies outlined within report CSR-2021-8 as it relates to the Huronia Airport Strategic Development Plan report. Moved by Councilor Chesky. I need a seconder if we could. Councilor McGinn. Councilor Chesky, you wanted to comment on this item?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much to the member municipalities for talking so much about the airport lately. That's been great. Just in terms of synchronicity, this motion did go before Penetang Machine Council, and they just changed the composition of the committee. The airport committee would like the power to have our own discussion about what the airport looks like in the next 6 months. We certainly welcome assistance from staff. One from each member municipality would be greatly appreciated, but we're not looking to firm that up or lock anybody in at this time. We'd like to have the further discussion on that. So we appreciate the opportunity to work hard on the future of the airport. And I think the whole board is excited about the opportunity. So what we're looking to do tonight is make an amendment or a friendly amendment to change the composition to just the airport board, along with one staff member from each member municipality. I apologize for pulling this so late, and I did provide a bit of language for the motion.
Wonderful. Any other questions or comments with regards to this item? I see none. Madam Clerk, is there anything? Mayor Strathern?
Thank you. Are you asking whether there are comments or questions around an amendment to have only the board the commission handle the next phase of this?
I was just about to ask the clerk what we had to do with regards to the friendly amendment, or if we needed a brand new amendment. So, Madam Clerk, can you provide me with some clarity if we need to, if a friendly amendment is fine, or do we need a brand new motion?
Well, what I would do is read the current motion, and then I would read the proposed amendment to the motion. So the council would vote on the amendment. So the motion reads that report CRS 2021-8 Huronia Airport 2019 Strategic Development Plan Next Step, dated February 17, 2021, be received, and that council endorses the recommended next step strategy as outlined within report CSR 2021-8 as it relates to the Huronia Airport Strategic Development Plan report. Now, the proposed amendment is to add on to this motion, and that the composition of the committee be composed of airport commission members and 3 staff members, 1 from each member municipality to be discussed. So So council would be voting on that portion initially. And if that is turned down, then council will consider the main motion.
So do we need to read it again, or is that fine with hearing from the clerk? Or I see a nod of heads, yes. So all those in favor? Oh, I apologize. Mayor Strathern had a comment before we move forward. Mayor Strathern.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I appreciate the Commission's desire to continue with their efforts around the airport, and there have been a number of things that they're doing that are actually improving the financial viability of the airport. But there are a couple things here that I think go beyond the Commission. And the first is that it was the councils who basically requested an external review of the airport. It wasn't, I don't believe it was the Commission, it was councils who requested an external review to look at governance issues, to look at, to get an external opinion of how the airport was operating, how it compared to its contemporaries out in the broader world, and to look at the governance of same. They've come back. They put a report forward. All the council sat and listened to that, and basically the report was fairly, no, not fairly. It was, I think, a good report. It reflected well on the airport and the work that commissioners have done, particularly of late, in the last 12 months or so. And in terms of their efforts to increase revenues, which through hangar development and that sort of thing. But one of the issues that's before us is in fact governance, and that the recommendation was that we have a skills-based a matrix developed, and that and the other recommendation was that we reach out to other agencies with respect to economic development around the airport itself. This is something that I think it takes us beyond the commission itself, and and I think that the CAO has put a lot of thought into this. And that in looking at having the North Simcoe Community Futures people being involved on a time limited basis, not on an ongoing, I'm a board member in all this stuff in over 3 or 4 years, on a time limited basis, meeting roughly once a month. Same with the Economic Development Corporation of North Simcoe. Also reaching out to members of staff and also council. And I think that when you start looking at governance and you're asking the people who are currently governing, it's sort of like the fox looking at the henhouse or guarding the henhouse. It's not, there's potentially a conflict there. I'm not saying that people would behave in a conflicting manner, but I believe there's a conflict there, potentially. And I think also that the board has had ample opportunity to reach out to the other areas and if not. Now, maybe they will, but I think that the recommendation from staff was well thought out, and the board, the commission rather, at the last instance, is suddenly wanting to pull it back in. And I don't think that, given we've been doing externals, we've had an external review that we had to ask for to look at the operations, and that we now have a recommendation for an external look over 6 months. I heard at the Penetang meeting that the board felt it could do the job just as well, as because the motion was put forward back by another commissioner, Councillor Rose. And he just made the statement that the commission could do the job as well as staff. And staff were not in that motion at Penetang Machine. And yet, we're looking to have staff participate in this. And I would say that you need beyond just staff, and you need beyond just, and if some of the commissioners are actually council members, and we're suggesting 3 council members. So if the commissioners want to participate, then say, we'd like as commissioners, council reps to be on that, to be part of that process, and then consider that. So I frankly think that this is not a good idea to turn it back to the commission. It goes against everything we've done so far to look at an outside view looking in as opposed to an inside view looking maybe out or sideways. So I will not vote for the amendment, and I would suggest that council seriously consider not voting for it. Thank you.
Well, I think if I'm understanding correctly, Madam Clerk, the first motion is the motion in front of us that's on the recommendation that reports CSR-2021-8, that Huroney Airport 2019 Strategic Development Plan next step dated February 17th, 2021 be received, and that council endorse the recommended next step strategy as outlined within report CSR 2021-8 as related to the Huroney Airport Strategic Development Plan report. So we have that motion in front of us. If we'd like to vote on that.
No.
Oh,
Well, that's the motion in front. So we need to come up with some clarification with regards to, unless I'm misunderstanding on what the procedure should be, Madam Clerk, we have a recommendation in front of us, and we're now asking to change it. The recommendation, so I just want to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
Okay, so basically the proposed amendment, is to be considered first. So you would want a mover and seconder for that, and then have a vote on that. And if if council decides to defeat that motion, then you revert back to the original motion, which is the main motion.
Right. All right. So the amended motion, if you could read it so we get on the add to it. Sorry, apologize, and then we'll allow Councillor Chesky to comment. I just want to make sure I think I'm missing the amended motion.
That's okay. So what council would be voting on right now is this particular wording, and that the composition of the committee be composed of Airport Commission members and 3 staff members, 1 from each member municipality, to be discussed.
Wonderful. You had question or comment with regards to this amended motion, Councillor Chesky?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just have to respectfully disagree with your worship. I think the Airport Commission fully agrees that the Lumex report is a great report. And once the Lumex report has come forward, the Airport Commission has worked very hard to increase the throughput of the airport, increase customer base, increase business interest. We've had more knocks on the door during a pandemic in the last few months than we had the entire previous year. So since we did get the Lumex report, I think the airport has done an incredible job of increasing all of the things that we need to do to be self-sustaining and revenue positive eventually is the goal. And I think 6 months isn't too much to ask. I don't think the Airport Commission has been given a fair shot to, I won't say correct the ship or correct the flight, if you will, because I think we are on a good path right now. And I know North Simcoe Community Futures are incredibly busy right now. I know people who work there and are incredibly bogged down. I've reached out to them multiple times trying to help small businesses get a leg up during a hard time. So I know that they're incredibly busy right now. We do have a member of the EDCNS sitting on our current board who is very passionate about the airport and would work actively with us as the Airport Commission. All we're asking is for 6 months to get this business plan in motion. I think we've done a great job as a commission. I would challenge you, Your Worship, to find another committee that can say that they've increased viewership, increased boots on the ground, increased knocks on the door during a pandemic. I think we've done a great job. I think we deserve the chance to be given 6 months. And in 6 months from now, if I don't come back to you with some solid answers on how we're going to be a sustainable business, then I'll eat crow and you can say I told you so. And worst case scenario, we lost 6 months. And you can't add these other committees and board members and more staff members without adding cost too, which I think is counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve here during a pandemic as well. So thank you.
Councillor Main?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just a little confused because what's being proposed in the report, is it a separate task force, a 9-person task force, but does that work in parallel with the current commission. Oh, so it's replacing the commission with a task force.
No.
It's okay. So they are separate.
Yes.
So
hold on
Yeah.
1 second. As our rep, Councillor Chesky, would you care to comment?
Thank you.
Answer Councillor Main's question.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the time. It's more of a steering committee to say what that group feels is success for the airport in the future. I think the LUMEX report made that very clear, and I think the board is empowered and very ambitious and very motivated to get this done, using as little staff resources as possible, as economically feasible as possible. And we are passionate and adamant that we can get this done. If that's not the will of council, then we'll work with what we have. But we as an airport commission do feel that we can certainly get this off the ground, for lack of better terms.
Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Chesky. Councillor Main, follow up?
Yeah. So if we receive this report, are we enacting the terms of reference around the task force? Okay, because
sounds like we are.
Because for me, it doesn't would not hurt to have the airport commission as an active stakeholder or as a participant on the task force, if the whole point is to have a 6-month kind of task force, figure out how to implement this plan. So it's either or. Like I certainly see the merit of a task force, and I certainly understand the value of what the commission brings to it. So I think we can combine the two. I certainly understand the notion around a friendly amendment. I just didn't realize that we had to kind of decide upon this right now. Governance stuff usually takes a while, so perhaps we just simply receive the report and move forward and discuss what the potential composition of the task force would be. But again, now we have multiple partners and we have Midland, Penetang, Tiny Tame. It's kind of, we're going around in circles here. So either way, I mean, if the task force wants to do it or if the airport commission wants to do it, they have our support. But I think the task force, it looks to be kind of a multi organizational input. So it's very wise the way it was thought out. I think that we have an opportunity here that people can work together.
Your Worship.
This isn't much from my perspective about the ability of the commission to do its work. They're doing their work. They have, as far as I know, there's 2 reasonably large opportunities, one of which they're going to have to come back to the municipalities very quickly anyway. It has to do, you would have heard it mentioned during their presentation. I know the company that is looking to work with I worked with them a little bit before we sent them over that way. So I get that the commission's, they've got some good things happening. The point is that we commissioned a study to look at it. The study's been done. They've acknowledged the work of the commission, but there's a governance issue here. And you can't have, to my way of thinking, somebody who's providing current governance, you can have them make a recommendation, but the question is, do you want them to? I think it would be nice to have externals look at that, consult with the commission. But I mean, this recommendation that was put forward in terms of reference and the committee composition and so on, and what came out of the Loomis report was well thought out, I think, by the CAOs and now presented to us in their report. And the commission, I respect their desire to want to do this particular work, but I respectfully submit that on the governance piece, it should be an external. So I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to follow my sword on this, but I do believe there's a conflict there. And I do acknowledge, as Councillor Olszewski has said, the work of the board, and there are some very capable people there. So,
Councillor Gordon?
Maybe I missed this in the report, but what's the cost? Is there an aggregate cost to our ratepayers for establishing this secondary body to do this work?
Well, there's definitely always. I'll allow our representative on the airport to answer that question, if you don't mind, Councillor Chesky.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, as much as we've tried to work the budgets every year so that staff time is accounted into each committee. If we're going to look at things that way, adding staff time to the committee will indefinitely add cost. I think we've just heard earlier about the rec center being $1 million in the red, and we're going to talk about 3 municipalities sharing $300,000. I think the commission's doing a great job. We're trending in the right direction. And I truly believe if you empower us to move this forward, we won't let you down. And you can hold me to that.
Mr. CEO, you had a comment?
I was going to just add, since it was a report brought forward by the CAOs, I just wanted to make sure that we were answering Councillor Gordon's question, and there were no specific financials put in terms of cost, but there is cost of time, as Councillor Oszczewski has indicated. So to the extent that staff would be involved and other organizations, their time would be the cost involved here.
Follow up, Councillor Gordon?
Okay, so just so I'm clear, if it's not going to cost anything other than the people's time, and everyone's interested in doing this, so they're not going to lament putting their personal time in, the commission's going to continue doing their good job of, trying to, get off the ground and make the place more profitable. And then we in tandem have this new organization created of all the stakeholders who have that delineation between commissioners and the stakeholders. And it's not costing any more money, then why wouldn't we just let that go now? Why would we defer it for 6 months? Just let them rip and work in parallel, and let's move the ball forward. Like, I don't see any negative. Is anyone taking this personally, that it's some kind of vote of non-confidence that they want the 6 months for? Councillor Oszczewski, maybe you can fill me on what the delay would, what's the benefit of the delay if this isn't technically costing us anything and you guys can work in parallel towards the same goal?
Councillor Chesky, you care to comment?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the Lumex report is doing what we're trying to accomplish with this subcommittee, or this lead, like whatever you want to call this steering committee. It's similar to Midland Council putting the Midland Forward document together, and we all worked actively on the side at Midland Forward, and we all were the councillors that worked on Midland Forward. There's no external bodies brought it. We did this all together, and we talked about what Midland was going to look like and how hard we were going to work on it. The Airport Commission are passionate, eager, and ambitious, and seriously want this job to be taken on. The governance of the airport is something we can talk about. It's something that we do talk about as a commission quite often. But currently, I think with what we're trying to achieve from the Lumex report, I think we do have the capabilities on the board. If a steering committee is formed, we will work around the steering committee, work with in parallel and in tandem with the steering committee, but we're passionate, and this is already passed in Penetang. Penetang Council has gone forward with this composition, so I'm just asking that this council does the same in terms of synchronicity and working as a team.
Wonderful. Councillor McGinn, and then I'll go to your worship.
So one question I had was answered, and I thank you for that. I don't see any harm in trying. As you had said, give us 6 months. One of the things that I do try to support is groups, taking things on and taking them on with their heart. And we do that. And the way that the Lumex report is written, and just the way the composition is of the board and the people that is already there, I don't have any fear in supporting you in this. And I appreciate that you had said, if it doesn't work out, that you'll come back and, it'll be humble pie, buddy. But, there's every now and then you got to say, let's give it a shot. Do I think you're going to have to eat pie? I don't think you will. So I'm supporting you 100% in this.
Your worship.
That's okay. Just go, I guess you call a question.
Wonderful. We here to Councillor Gordon, I'll allow you a last comment.
Just a quickie. Just what does not work out look like? It's kind of a vague, milestone for us to judge 6 months from now. What can you help us out with? What would not work? Working out look like for us?
Yeah, that's yeah, thank you very much. That's a tricky question. I think it depends where your expectations are really at the end of the day. The return on investment at the airport, as it sits right now, is already good, in my opinion, if not better than that. What the airport committee wants to do is come up with a plan to be self-sustaining, to be more publicly acknowledged as a public asset. better public education pieces around what the airport offers to the general public and what you're getting for your penny a day. So yeah, we are totally passionate and eager about taking this on, and what success looks for us is being self-sustainable, revenue positive. We've got some great things in the works, and we've worked really hard on getting the infrastructure in place for the great things that are coming up, and we really want to be the team that drives this home.
Councillor McGinn, last question.
Sorry for, it doesn't work out comment, but I think it will work out. So just to ensure for clarification that it's hopeful that akin to some other agencies, groups, and boards that we have, the desire is to become self-sufficient, and that this is the step that is needed, and these are the processes to go through to hopefully get there. And during that time period, there isn't going to be an abrupt lack of communication and involvement from us and member municipalities. I am understanding that correctly. Well then, I support you 100%, and I wish everybody well, and let's see how this goes.
The motion's on the floor, the amended motion. All those in favor? That's, I'll vote for it also. That's 5. So that's carried. All those against? I see 2 and 3. All right. Thank you.
I didn't vote.
That's a 5-3 vote. Thank you very much. Good luck, Councillor Chesky. Next item, we have a COVID update from our CEO, Mr. CEO.
Deputy Mayor Ross?
Yeah.
So council just supported the amendment, correct?
Correct.
So now you would present the motion again as amended.
Okay, could you read that for us, please?
Yes, I can. So it's just that report CSR 2021-8 Huronia Airport 2019 Strategic Development Plan, next steps dated February 17, 2021 be received, and that council endorses the recommended next steps strategy as outlined within report CSR 2021-8 as it relates to the Huronia Airport Strategic Development Report, and that the composition of the committee be composed of Airport Commission members and 3 staff members, 1 from each member municipality to be discussed. And prior to considering that, was there a mover and seconder for the previous motion?
Yes, there was a mover by Councillor Chesky, second by Councillor McGinn.
Sorry, just clarifying. Okay, and that's the motion.
All those in favor?
Oh, is there a mover and seconder for this main motion?
Is Councillor Chesky and Councillor Main.
Okay, thanks.
All those in favor? Wonderful. So passed. Mr. CEO, you're up with our, is that fine? Sorry, Madam Clerk, we're following all procedure?
Nope, you're good to move on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Mr. CEO, COVID update, please, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and members of council. Quick update in terms of COVID. I think we all appreciate kind of the circumstance that certainly Midland and the rest of Simcoe continues to be in with the pandemic. 128 cases in total across Midland, 6 deaths, unfortunately. Simcoe has seen a little over 6,000 cases. 650 of those cases are active cases, 3% for fatality rate. 160 of those cases are with the new UK variant, which, as we know, is highly contagious. Will probably become the main variant of the pandemic. We are, however, and you can see that both in Simcoe, Muskoka, and across the province, that the incident rate is declining, which is good. Hopefully, it will continue that trend. And as a result, you saw the province lift the lockdown restriction. So we are now in red control. Still a very stringent area to be in terms of the control measures that are in place. Certainly pretty severe. It's the most severe in terms of restrictions before you go into obviously closing businesses. So again, there's still a lot of conditions that we need to operate on. And anytime you move from these various levels, there's about a 2-week waiting period from our experience to understand exactly what that means, because there are always some subtle changes. Red previously may not be what red is now. So we'll have those discussions with the health unit and with our municipal partners to find out exactly what it means. I think some of the basic restrictions of only having 10 people in sports facilities, as an example, no practices, no games, increased distancing, really put some pretty onerous restrictions on the use of those facilities. But we're going to try and see what is possible. We'll work with our associations to see what interest they have in this control level and what would happen should we move further down into the orange level, and prepare ourselves for that. So that's an important consideration. We're also taking a look at town hall to see if certainly we can continue to obviously operate the way we are today by appointment, but can we relax that a little bit and allow some foot traffic to come in without appointments. So we're making that assessment now, and we should be able to make any adjustments and announce those fairly shortly. The other thing that's pretty active as well is we're being asked to look at a mass vaccination center in Midland. So the use of our facilities to provide vaccinations at one of our areas. So our staff have been working with the health unit to assess whether that's possible. Unfortunately, that doesn't come with any funding for costs. So that is certainly something every municipality that's being asked to participate in needs to consider. The health unit's trying very hard to see if they can get any funding for us, but it will be certainly one of the considerations. We obviously want to support our communities, all of our communities, if we can do that. It would require some effort, obviously, and some attention from our staff, because this would run for quite an extended time. I think it's from March to August, and potentially longer if there are booster shots. So we're taking a hard look at that. But again, we'll, like all Midlanders, we'll try and do our best to respond. So that's an important aspect. The last thing I'd like to say, I'd like to give a bit of a shout out to the communication teams across North Simcoe. They came together and put a campaign to raise awareness about staying home, staying safe, and staying lives. And, they put some radio ads together. We had the participation of the various mayors across North Simcoe, and we created some pretty cost-effective ways to, again, get that message out and make it a really unified message about North Simcoe. So I just wanted to thank all of them. That's the extent of my update, Deputy Mayor, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deneau, and I definitely support the rec center in any means possible to get a vaccine rolled out to the community. I don't think that anybody could handle a third time lockdown. So I just pray that we can get this vaccine rolling. So kudos to you for putting a rec center out there. And it really is the key to everyone's mental health and happiness is to get this vaccine going and get back to normal. Because I honestly believe if we're going to ask our community or any community or Ontario Canadians to lock down a third time, well, I don't know if that, people can handle that. So let's hope we can get that vaccine, get that rec center open for everyone to come and get it. So I appreciate that. Questions? I saw Councilor Chesky, and anybody else, please hold your card. I'll make a list. Councilor Chesky.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. Gotten a ton of emails today about opening the rec center and the ice and all that stuff. I don't envy the position that you and our staff are in right now. I feel, it's kind of been downloaded onto us a bit prematurely. I don't know if this is, in my opinion, the time to be opening the floodgates, but I guess that is where we're at, and it is what it is. So as council's informal social media guy, I'd like to apologize to you for the runaround today about the budget increase in your wages. It was certainly a challenge, and we'll do our best to get ahead of that tomorrow and clear the record. That was inappropriate, and some people owe you an apology. So on behalf of the social media world, without fearing a point of order for getting off topic, I apologize to you, and thanks for your time.
Councilor Main.
I didn't actually have a COVID question. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just echoing the response to all the emails that we're getting about the Sports and Rec Center. We got to find a way to keep it affordable and get it open when we can. Unfortunately, I mean, following the news today, the murder hornet equivalent of COVID has just reared its head. We now have apparently the combination of more than one variant into something called a recombinant virus. And that is now starting to happen in Canada. I've pulled it up now to make sure I pronounced it properly. This was on CTV News today. So realistically, I think, we can hope for the best, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to see another wave, then probably another one, and very likely more lockdowns. And I hate to be Debbie Downer here, and apologize to Debbies of the world, but people still don't take this thing seriously. It's still just a flu to many, and I see and hear this constantly. So I think we need to plan for the very real eventuality, plan for the worst and hope for the best. If we can, use the Sports and Rec Center or any of our facilities to stage vaccinations, that's fantastic. I mean, why wouldn't we? But the reality of us just trying to put this behind us with a few vaccinations and get back to life as normal, as much as I would love to see that happen, I'm also quite a realist, and I suspect that given the general public apathy now, and they're sick and tired of COVID, and they're having troubles masking and social distancing and not doing things they're not supposed to not do, I honestly believe we're in for a bit of more of a long haul here. So let's be prudent and careful and not build up people's hopes too much. I, just like the rest of you, want these services to resume ASAP, and I've said so many times over the past year. But we do need caution has to be the primary driver here. So again, let's plan for the worst, hope for the best. And I've already gone on the record several times now about my ideas for the budget, and we're going to beat that to death next week. But we really need to look after cost containment and helping our citizens out. So let's do what we can. And I appreciate the efforts of our CAO. And I will admit that I also read those posts online. And while I didn't comment, I don't think I commented directly about it because I wanted to hear about it tonight. It is nice to hear that the wage increase isn't yours. I mean, not that you wouldn't, you could still ask for one, but it is nice to have some clarity here. Although the question still remains, who else is in your department that's getting a wage increase that includes wages and benefits? So that we will unearth and have fulsome discussion about next week. So anyone who is following this and is concerned, we're doing it next week, and it'll all be clear to everybody at the same time. So thanks for the update and taking it on the chin tonight. That couldn't have been easy. I was kind of shocked to see your camera come on for that one. I thought Ms. Yorkin was going to handle it for you, but good on you for stepping up.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Mayor Strathern.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm sort of a glass half full kind of guy. And I think that if we do follow, and so far we've been very good in this area at following community safety and health advisory guidelines. And basically what the Medical Officer of Health for the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit is saying, stay home, stay safe, save lives. And the life you save might be your grandmother, it might be your neighbor, it might be your family member, it could be a coworker. Now is not the time to be letting your guard down. And as far as these vaccines and the mutations that are going on, the mRNA vaccines that are Pfizer and Moderna have developed through some groundbreaking work about a woman out of the University of Pennsylvania some time ago, are very, very robust. Data from the Israeli experience, in which they've inoculated a phenomenal percentage of their population, shows that these vaccines are robust against these variants. So it's, well, I understand that what was it, the killer wasp or whatever, murder wasp, of maybe there. I think that these vaccines, from what I understand of my schooling way back when, would suggest that the technology being employed here is very easily modified to deal with these things. So I think that while I agree with Councillor Gordon that there will be people who abuse this situation, most people will follow the guidelines. You know, wash your hands, same old thing. And every time I turn on CBC News, it's the same old thing. Wash your hands, socially distance, wear a mask. If we do that, it doesn't matter what these things are. And if you, as much as you can, stay at home, do so. And you know, if you want to go outside and get some fresh, then go for a walk. But be aware of who's around you. That's really all I have to say. I think there's a bright light. It's not a freight train.
Let's hope.
Let's hope.
Any other questions or comments? Yes. Any other questions? I see none. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO, for your update. Appreciate it. Any notice of motion? Councillor, sorry, Mayor Strathern. You're muted, sir. You're muted.
Got to do it at least once during.
I know. Yeah. That's that new catchphrase for 2021.
You're muted. I just, while we're going through the budget process, I thought back to something we did last year. And so I would like to put on the floor that that as a community relief measure, staff be directed to examine the implications of waiving tax, interest, and penalties with a report to be brought forward to the future meeting of council. And that would apply to
thank you very much.
Taxes are due this Friday, I think it is. So it'll be the next installment.
Wonderful. We'll look forward to that for our March 4th meeting, or 3rd, sorry. Any other notice of motion? I see none. Any announcements? I'll start with Councillor Chesky, go to Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm chatty tonight. So this Saturday is the coldest night of the year walk, and Councillor Main and I are going to do our walk this Saturday, and I haven't registered a team on the website yet, but my street, the Lakewood drivers, are kicking some butt, raising some serious cash here. So it's been so great to see my little street get so politically active all of a sudden, and they're all in for the guest house homeless shelter this Saturday. So we're all walking. We're all going to walk separately, and we're going to distance. But something we're all excited about, and it's great to have something to be excited about, supporting a great cause. They're also looking for winter jackets, hats, toques, mitts, scarves, and that kind of stuff. So if you can gather any of that kind of stuff, if you want to leave it curbside, Saturday, I'm happy to do a round and pick some stuff up and drop it all down to the guest house shelter. So just get a hold of me. A very easy guy to get a hold of. So something to be excited about. Coldest night of the year.
And now, Councillor Chesky, if you could share with us where someone like myself could make a donation.
Sure. I'll send you the link. The easiest way to do it is just go on Google and Google coldest night of the year guest house. It'll come up on the site. I recommend the Lakewood Drivers. Awesome group. I would donate to them. Hopefully by tomorrow, if I'm not too tired, there's a team Midland up there to donate to as well. So
wonderful. That's great. Congratulations, and thank you so much for your efforts. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you very much.
And I apologize before you go, and of course, Councillor Main for his efforts, and thank you both for stepping up. I apologize. Councillor Gordon.
So needless to say, there were some people that tried to get a hold of us to have more comments for the budget tonight unsuccessfully for like round 2. So they've been encouraged to send those in to the email, and so they get collated and answered by staff. However, I've also, like as most of you know, or probably all of you know, I host these informal Zoom meetings where up to 4 councillors can participate. We usually only have 3. It's usually myself, Councillor Prost, and Councillor McGinn. And I'll be hosting one of those this Sunday at 7 p.m., 7 to 8, and I'll advertise that on my website and on my social media. And I invite anybody who wants to have last-minute kicks at the can of at least 3 councillors' ears about budget issues to, talk to us. If we can regurgitate some staff answers from previously asked questions, we will. Other things we'll just put in our pocket and bring them to the council Zoom session Monday to Wednesday. So it's just another way to stay connected with us and get questions answered. So if you did miss the opportunity tonight, I didn't want you to think that you're stuck with just an email. Please do that as well. But I will be hosting that, and watch for the announcement shared by at least 2 or 3 of us in the next day or so. Thank you for your participation and your patience.
Thank you very much. Any other announcements? I had a couple if I could. First of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Campbell, Mr. Jeremy, Mr. Deneau, and especially Madam Clerk for the help tonight with regards to our budget public meeting. Went much better than I had expected. I didn't sleep much last night, worried about how it was going to go. So I was happy to see that it went quite smoothly. And I want to thank all the participants, all the residents that called in with their questions and concerns. It's I know for myself and council that they do not fall on deaf ears, and we definitely value your input and your opinion. I also wanted to remind everybody that unfortunately, due to COVID, the CLH, Community Living Huronia Gala would be coming up on February 20th at usually a great night to get together. This year it's virtual and it's free. So I would, after you support Councilor Chesky and Councilor Main with the Coldest Night Walk, I would suggest you come in and watch a free concert of the Trews. Sign up. They're looking for people to, it's the Trews Trio playing on Saturday night. I believe it starts at 7 p.m. You can click, go on their website, CLH Foundation Midland. It'll pop right up. And they're asking you to sign up, but they're looking, any type of donation. There's a silent auction, and you get to enjoy a free concert of the Trews. So please support another great group in the town of Midland and North Simcoe, Community Living Huronia. So any other announcements this evening? We'll move on to our next, sorry. I'm not sure if you have a motion to get us out of this, Your Worship. I'll leave it with you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do. Moved by Councillor Main, seconded by Councillor Chesky, that the Committee of the Whole rise and report. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the a great evening.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So then our next item would then be that recommendations of the Committee of the Whole for the meeting of February 17th, 2021 be adopted as a resolution of council. All those in favor? Thank you. That also carries. Next, moved by Councillor Downer, seconded by Councillor Prost is not here. Councillor McGinn. That bylaw 2021-5 being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the regular council meeting with closed session held February 17th, 2021 be passed and enacted. All those in favor? Thank you. Last but not least, moved by Councillor McGinn, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ross, that this regular meeting of council adjourn at, if I can find it, somebody tell me what the time is.
Sorry, 10:38.
Thank you. At 10:38 p.m. All in favor? Thank you. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you bright-eyed, bushy-tailed on Monday. And good luck with work, Councillor Shevsky.
Just before everybody departs, Councillor Gordon, you had mentioned about the public providing comments with respect to budget and that to a forum that you have, but really and truly those things should really be coming through to council as a whole if they have questions and comments. So just as a
I prefaced my announcement with that they should be using that, and that it's really just a continuation of my existing forum where people come to talk about whatever they want to talk about, and I'm sure some of it will be budget related. But I did preface that. I was quite emphatic that I made sure that was said. You could play it back, I guess, after and hear that if you missed it.
No, I just want to make sure that that any debate or that those any comments from the public are forwarded on to member of council, and that staff are when you noted about responding to the members of the public by getting answers from provided by members of staff, that it probably should be directed to staff. That way they're able to provide fulsome response if they have some questions.
Oh no, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. I get it. And of course, there'll be plenty of opportunities for staff to respond to questions either that are council originated or just through our mouths from people that contact us on a daily basis about issues. So we'll look forward to all that next week. It's not an alternative collection mechanism. It's just basically an invite.
All right. It was just a reminder. Thank
No,
you.
that's fair. Absolutely. Yeah. Work with staff, not against them.
Thank you.
Hey guys, have a great evening.
Yeah.
Have a
See
good
you,
night, everybody. Take
see you
care.
Monday.